Well, most of us have all applied twice before we got on here, so.
I've got that one, which is fine.
Right. Who did?
He forgot to pay for us to answer.
Oh, that's too cute.
Okay, what do we have?
All C-trans stuff. Two people back there told me I need to get a higher chair because nobody can see me up here.
What's that one? One of the lanes right there.
Judy, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to get us started here.
Whatever.
Okay.
The time is now 6:32, and I'm calling this session of the Ridgefield City Council to order. Would you please rise and for the flag salute? Mayor Pro Tem Chipman.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Miss Julie, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Favela.
Here.
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Councilmember Burkle.
President.
Councilmember Wells.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Chipman.
Here?
Mayor Cole.
Here. Okay. Mr. Stewart, any late changes to the agenda tonight?
We do have one late change, Mayor. We were made aware that one of the items for the consent agenda was not included in the packet, and we want to make sure that we bring that back after it's been included, and that is the memorialization and approval for City Manager 24 and 25 initiatives. So it asks that we pull that and bring it back.
Okay, we will pull that and we'll revisit that at another date.
Thank you,
Sounds
Mayor.
good. Okay. Moving forward, it's now time for public comment. It's now time for a public comment. Anybody wishing to address the council regarding items not subject to a specific public hearing may come forward at this time to the podium. If you're online, use the raise hand feature located at the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. For controls of the phone, press *9 for raise hand and press *6 to mute or unmute. Please state your name, and I ask that you address the council only, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Douglas Tweed. I'm a Camas resident since 1997. This is the reason I'm here is because this is about the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. Strongly oppose extension of light rail. It's a regional issue that affects everybody in Clark County and our taxes. That's why I'm here. So looking at actual C-Tran ridership numbers, it's clear there's no need for light rail, and bus service can easily continue to meet the demand for public transit at a much lower cost both now and the future. In fact, transit ridership over the I-5 bridge has decreased in the 17 years from 2006 to 2023. Now, you've been provided with this, and it's got a plot on here. I'll have to go through this quickly. So this was data that we obtained from C-Tran via public records request, and it has monthly boardings for various bus routes from 2018 to almost the end of 2023. And if you look at the numbers, people can see here, that pre-COVID, the numbers were whatever they were, and it's divided into express routes to downtown Portland, a local route over to Jansen Beach for people to shop without paying sales tax. And that's the more popular route. Well, just before COVID, it just plummeted. I mean, at COVID, it just plummeted, you can see, and it hasn't returned to those numbers. So if we look at what those numbers actually are, pre-COVID, it ended up being about, on average, about 2,750 boardings per day is what the average was, weekly average, okay? It was more probably on weekdays because it doesn't include weekends. And then after COVID, you can see it's dropped to less than half or so. Right now, as of the end of 2023, it comes to about 1,500 total boardings per day on average. And if those are round trips, that comes to half of 1,500, about 750 people being served. And they're being very adequately served by the bus service that C-Tran provides very nicely. And so there's no reason to have a $2 billion light rail extension. That's the additional cost to put light rail as opposed to just continuing with bus or rapid transit or whatnot. Now, how have these numbers changed over the last 20 years? Well, the CRC project, I've got a link here. This is in 2006. It was about 3,300 during the weekday. average. And so now it's about 1,500 during the average for the week. And so numbers have stabilized or gone down. Do I have any more time?
You have about 26 seconds.
Okay, so anyway, so the IBR predicts things are going to go up, numbers are going to go up 20 times in the next 20 years, where they've gone down in the last 20 years. And there's a Oregon economist Joe Courtwright reported last June that IBR's traffic modeling is outdated and needs to be redone to satisfy the U.S. Department of Transportation. And he has details, and then there's a link. IBR is yet to release updated ridership information. It's supposed to. They had an opportunity yesterday at the C-Tran meeting, and they did not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tweet. Okay, anybody else for public comment tonight?
Rob Akeley. I live at 1275 South 15th Way, Ridgefield. So what the gentleman before me was speaking about the light rail, now would be a perfect time. I'm requesting that this city council talk about it in your briefings and consider a resolution. It's funny, we talked about resolutions and ordinances, but this would be perfect for a resolution, which is an opinion. I know this will never come before you as a city council, but it would be a statement of your opinion on this matter, just like Camas did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akeley. Okay, another.
And I'm Margaret Tweed. I'm from Camas. And Camas did unanimously adopt that resolution against light rail. And you, the city of Ridgefield, joined with La Center, do have a membership on the C-Tran board that is making this decision. And in fact, it is the mayor of Ridgefield who is one of the members who voted for light rail in 2022. So it was his second time having voted for light rail, and your city manager has also voted for light rail. So I know that some of the administrators here and the former mayor were big proponents of light rail. However, in the 2012 vote that was counting, all of the cities in Clark County rejected the C-Tran proposition to extend Oregon TriMet Max light rail over the I-5 bridge. And in Ridgefield, that was a 59.77% rejection rate. So it's not unanimous within the city, but I do think would be good to update, as you'll be probably giving direction to your C-Tran representative, and it deserves some public discussion in advance of that, how the city will be represented. I don't know if citizens knew that Ron Onslow was going to vote for light rail again in 2022 or not. But what I wanted to say, just to reiterate that, the 3 bus routes that are going over the I-5 bridge today are adequately handled. The express bus is not bus rapid transit, it's just a regular bus, and currently it's traveling in a lane of traffic shared with other vehicles, and it's very efficient. On the South Run, on the way back, there is an HOV lane. But this proposal, the IBR proposal, includes adding light rail in addition to the express buses for fewer riders. Fewer riders. Why on earth would we need light rail? And they say it's because it holds more people and it runs every 7 minutes. Well, if people don't want to go there and they're not wanting to travel there for whatever reason, or they have different modes that they prefer, it really seems unnecessary, $2 billion just to construct the line. And part of that is because it's elevated. It has to build up to the bridge, which is a very tall bridge, 116 feet, or possibly a bascule bridge. And you've got all the overhead lines that are subject to freezing in winter and overheating in summer. So it's a lot of money to have to do all of that. Whereas a bus just travels on the road. And it's, let's see, about 13 times more on operation costs to run the light rail. And that's what C-Tran is really looking at in March. Should we fund this operation and maintenance of light rail? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tweet. Okay, anybody else for public comment this evening?
Thank you, Council. My name is Michael Andriotti. I'm a land use planner with AKS Engineering and Forestry. The comment I'm providing is in regards to the Carty Road sub-area code that's on the agenda tonight. I provided written comment earlier this week as well as the comment I'm going to read here, but this comment was provided very late in the day, so I wanted to read it out as well. The code is written will not allow any lot less than 9,800 square feet and will not allow any level of lot variety, as no lot could be much larger than 9,800 square feet in order to meet minimum density requirements. Allowing the 7,500 square foot lots through a master plan and providing lot variety were both recommendations and guidelines of the sub-area plan that was approved and adopted. Allowing a minimum lot area of 7,500 square feet through a master plan with a minimum lot width of 50 feet will allow for lot variety, but will also not change the fact that the development will not be able to exceed the maximum density of the RLD4 zoning district. A minimum lot area of 9,800 square feet would also still make meeting minimum density requirements challenging for lots that are not square or have critical areas, which is a good number of the lots in the sub-area, as they may not have dimensions needed to provide large enough lots, streets, buffers, stormwater facilities, and other required elements and still meet the minimum density. It could also potentially be challenging on square lots with no critical areas if they don't have the proper dimensions, either lengthwise or widthwise, to provide the required elements and meet minimum density. The larger proposed setbacks, even with a 9,800 square foot lot, will make providing a variety of home styles, including single-story homes or homes with a master on the main floor, challenging, greatly limiting the demographic of potential homeowners for the sub-area. It is understood also that maintaining the rural feel of the sub-area is important and was a goal of the sub-area plan. And that goal can be met with the use of the perimeter landscape buffers that are required in the code, as well as the more rural street sections that are required as part of the sub-area plan. And while getting this code approved as soon as possible is desirable, it is important that the impacts of approving the current version of the code is understood. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mayor and City Council, I'm Angela Zwingli. Last week, I watched the paper and glue documentary shown at Ridgefield's Old Liberty Theater. It was so moving and inspiring as it follows the artist's intention of giving a global voice to everyday people through gigantic paper photo murals of ordinary people. One resident living by the Mexican border wall art project said, "No one looked at the faces that live here until he made them big." Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for making us, the residents, big, for seeing and hearing us and treating us as the stakeholders we are in the city. We, the residents of Ridgefield Heights, who live by Ridgefield Heights, have felt completely overlooked these past 8 years, unlike the meetings in 2007, which surprisingly doesn't have any record of the discussions and agreements we made then regarding our own properties. We have felt we're of no consequence. We feel we have been repeatedly giving misleading answers, some intentionally to smooth over the immediate crisis, and some perhaps unintentionally. I was told years ago when buying expensive equipment that when you buy quality, you only cry once. I feel that way with transparency. When we are told how things really are, we only cry once. But we also have time to correct and change things as needed. After preliminary plats and final plats are approved, there is no public appeal process, only for the developers. One would think the color plan presented to City Council and the hearing examiner would be what would be drawn up and approved. None of us ever thought there was anything to be concerned about, as everything was depicted, documented, and signed. Wrong. By the time they started cutting down the grove of old firs and moving earth, it was too late. Plans were approved and we couldn't appeal the approved plans. Members of the City Council in 2017 are shocked how Ridgefield Heights has been developed. It's not what they envisioned. What is the point of City Council approving any development if ultimately engineers can change anything that was approved without running it by City Council for approval when it greatly deviates from the approved plan? We don't need an updated FAQ that has been misleading, intentionally or not. We need the documented truth now. We need access to the public records that should be at the fingertips of city staff for this fast-moving, large development going through the final 2 phases of staff review and recommendation for the final plat approval. I'm not trying to pick a bone from the past. I want to help make the best of what we have and somehow preserve what we still have and amend what we still can. Working and going through challenging times together builds and strengthens community. We want a seat at the stakeholders' table. We can add imagination, perhaps in ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wingley.
Evening. My name's Steve Muckensnabel. I own one of the properties that our engineer friend over there was referencing in the Carty Road sub-area. And I purchased the property back in 2016, moved out, driving through the cornfields and enjoyed the serenity there. Our property was surrounded by tall trees, quiet, and obviously since then a lot has changed. A lot of subdivisions going all up and down Hillhurst. Our property, which we were told that you couldn't build around, now has homes all around it. Just to the north of our property, very high density, 0 lot line homes. Right down there, they moved the bank to do it. It was right around Gee Creek. Didn't make a difference. A couple years ago, we had a meeting to talk about what to do with that Carty Road area. And at the time, I obviously wasn't for it. I had my little piece of paradise there. I had my animals and all that. But change happens, and I don't begrudge any developers coming in and building homes, cities growing, or the municipalities that approve it. So I had to accept it, and that's where we're at right now. So change is coming, and I decided to go ahead and sell the property. The challenge that we're having with the setbacks and lot sizes, when you're buying and selling real estate, it's the highest and best use, right? And so obviously I'm going to have to find my little piece of heaven, maybe a little further out. But the one that we have right now, we have to decide how do we best use this property. And so there was a change from 7,500 square foot minimums to 9,800 now. And I look at that and go, why are we doing that when you look all up and down Hillhurst, homes are, small 5,000 square foot lots. I don't know if I know many that are 7,500, at least the new homes, and certainly the ones that are adjacent to my property, they're 0 lot lines. So I look at it and go, okay, the folks that came in a couple years ago talking about the Carty area, I totally agree with them. You go further down Carty, that's rural down there. They still got the horses and the cows and all that going. But we're talking literally right off of Hillhurst. In fact, when the development's done, there will be access directly onto Hillhurst. So that development will be no different than all of the other ones going up and down Hillhurst. So I would hope that you would consider changing those. I think there's an argument for even smaller lots. Not that I would ask for that, but I think you could argue considering what's right next to our property. So I hope you consider that, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else in the audience wishing to give public comment this evening? Miss Julie, anybody online?
Not seeing anyone online.
Okay, we will move on in our agenda. As many of you know, we have a council appointment that we will be fulfilling tonight. So the next part of this meeting is council will move to executive session pursuant to RCW 42-30.110, section 1H. And I think, council, we will resume here. It is 6:50 right now, so we'll come back in at 7:02 p.m. Does that work? Approximately 10 minutes. 7:02 p.m. Yeah.
Everybody, executive session. Excuse me. Hello. Sorry. Hi, everybody. Just wanted to let you know executive session has been extended until 7:10. So they'll be coming back at 7:10. So go back to your conversations.
Everybody, we will be coming back in at 7:15. 5 more minutes, 7:15.
a Supreme Court justice or something.
Tom? Let's just- It doesn't have to be.
All right, it's 7:15. That concludes our executive session. We will now move into the deliberation process. So at this point, council will get to discuss the candidates, and then at the end of that, our city clerk, Julie Ferris, will pass out paper ballots, and we will do a paper vote. And we'll go from there. So council, who would like to get started?
I'll start. So I guess I'd like to say we have two excellent candidates here before us tonight. Excellent candidates. And I loved Megan's interview. Megan had a very strong voice. She's a business owner, as Rob said. She did a very powerful interview in the things that she said. I think she would probably be a very, very good councilwoman for Ridgefield. Maggie also has the history of being on the Planning Commission, which is something that we have always not required, but we have definitely wanted people to come onto the council that have served in a previous position. So she definitely has that going for her, and she has had so much experience. I mean, she's on so many other things also. So Maggie also would also make an excellent counselor. So I think it's a very tough choice myself, very tough choice.
Okay. Who's next? Okay.
I too would like to thank both of you for putting yourself out here. It's a big deal, really it is. I found Megan's answers to be very refreshing. I enjoy the fact that we have an entrepreneur, a business owner, someone that has done it on her own. She is not dependent on somebody else to provide her with things. Maggie, you're a marvelous, marvelous volunteer. You look like, I couldn't see her back there. You're a marvelous, marvelous volunteer. I see you at many, many functions in Ridgefield. I work with you on several of them, and I thank you for stepping up and opening yourself up to this process. Thank you.
All right, who's next? Okay, Councilor Favela.
Oh, now I am. Okay. Yeah, I echo thanking both of you, Maggie and Megan, for stepping up. So many people, I say this so many times, so many people are so quick to say, make a complaint or a comment, but the amount of people when the door's open for them to actually step into that capacity is far fewer than the people who will speak up in the back. So I really appreciate the two of you. Interestingly enough, through this application process, I learned that Maggie and I don't know if you know this, but apparently we were coworkers last year for a whole year. I have no idea. So that was interesting, and I hope you enjoyed your time at the agency. I've known Megan for over a decade with her business. I got the joy of watching her grow your business and do your thing, and it's been really phenomenal. I met Megan actually through her mom, and she was living in California at the time. Maggie, your time on Planning Commission as a fellow Planning Commissioner, it's important. It's an eye-opening experience, and it really kind of gives you that level of knowledge that is always helpful. I appreciate how much you're involved in the community, and likewise, Megan, I appreciate how much you're involved in the community, and just finding the things that you're involved in are so niche. And it, to me, as somebody who I always root for the underdog, just by nature of what I do for a living, I appreciate when I see people look at the other underdogs and want to bring them up and give them space at the table. So thank you. Thank you, Maggie.
Great, thank you. Councilor Davis.
Yeah,
I truly did enjoy being able to, learn more about the both of you and just really understand the skill sets that you would bring to this role. As the new guy for another few minutes, I guess. It wasn't long ago that I was in your shoes, and I really want to reiterate just the respect I have for you stepping forward. It can be an intimidating process, and so my hat is off to both of you. Megan, I really liked your answers, especially coming from the perspective of a business owner. And as somebody that is in that world and your advocacy for downtown, I really did appreciate that. And one thing that stuck out to me about your interview that, I don't know, it might not have stuck out to everybody else, but I really appreciate, I thought it was very telling when you talked about the outreach you did with Larch. And seeing like this opening to do something really neat and with a community that's often overlooked, just that mindset was something that really just stuck out to me. And so I just wanted you to know that made an impact on me. Maggie, your work on the Planning Commission, Lions Club, Green Bag, Arts Association, a lot of this role is having your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And, I do think it's important from a council perspective for people to have, for us to have people that are engaged in different areas and things of that nature. And so I really appreciate that. I love the fact that you're on the east side. Like, we've got so much growth going on over there, and that was something that I had talked about during my process, was how do we keep the east side engaged? And so I really enjoy the fact that that is a perspective that you would bring to this council as well. So this is tough. Like, we've got two fantastic applicants, and I guess I look forward to hearing the commentary from my colleagues up here. Thank you.
Councilor Wells.
My turn in the barrel. Anyway, I congratulate both of you for doing the application. I've had no contact with either one of you other than Madeline was at one council meeting. I seen it that way, but I have, other than what Councilman Burkle had, was a lot of praise for you as far as being involved in the community. I spent the last day and a half on part of the resumes that you guys sent in. This happens to be yours. I got the other one back here, and I highlighted. I had a different choice as my number one choice, but they happened to drop out. And so then I had to reevaluate. And listening tonight to the answers to the questions you had, I'm addressing both of you. I'm not picking one out or the other out right now. They were really, really good. One of my concerns is, I guess, in picking it out, is keeping I got some notes here that I wrote down, keeping a diverse representation on the council, not one-sided or the other-sided, so we're all got a little different skill sets, and to have a skill set that will complement the community. That's one of my biggest objectives. I'm not a public speaker. Usually the quiet guy in the back corner. So it's hard on me to turn around and address everybody out there. They both got really good qualities, really good qualities. With serving on the Planning Commission, Mr. Davis, he applied for the council position twice, and he went back to the planning commission. Did he come back? Huh?
Parks Board.
Huh?
Parks Board.
Parks Board, oh, excuse me.
To be fair,
See, I
someone
can't even
else.
keep track. And tell you honestly, I don't know the difference between a resolution and an ordinance, other than, no, I do. But what I'm trying to say, that's a tough one. I have a CDL. I would never pass the test anymore. And I've had that for 50 years. But anyway, I'm getting off subject. Both of you, young ladies, I guess that's apropos, would be an asset to this council. So I guess I'm going to end with that, and I guess it'll end up down the road. We'll probably have some more deliberation here, but then we'll end up having a vote in the end. And thank you again for applying, both of you.
Great, thank you, Counselor. And I'll jump in, just my observations. And this is a unique position because it requires different skill sets, and when you're doing it part-time, like you don't always get to the chance to master those things. And so on the one hand, it's an interpersonal position, right? You have to know how to communicate with people and interact with people in some capacity. And sometimes it's just like you're really good with a certain group of people or something like that, but there is a huge communications component to that. And then there's also the community component. This is always the part that I say, this is the part we don't get paid for, right? We get up here, and when you're on council, you get paid a small little bit of money in a month, and yet nobody up here is doing it for the money. But you do it, and the paid portion is different, and the unpaid portion is you're expected to be at all these events. You're expected to be doing Pink Lemonade, and you're expected to be doing multicultural festival and showing up at Color Run on Saturday, and embedded in the school system. Like, that's a huge part of what we do here. And I think both candidates, what I saw, I would say I felt like going into this, Maggie I just saw her everywhere. I've seen Maggie everywhere I go, and that's a real strong testament to her commitment to this community, and I think that's really important. Megan, I felt like I didn't see as much, but as I learned more about you, your commitment to our downtown is very, very apparent, and I think it's very, very important to have somebody who's an advocate for our downtown. We hear an awful lot about what's happening over at the Junction, and all of the growth and the big commercial stuff that's coming in there. And I know that we always go back to downtown, but sometimes I feel like that's kind of more just something we say and not something we really do. And what I gathered from Megan is that's something she really does, that's a really important part. I also feel like the multicultural aspect of who we are is really important. I've seen Maggie through all of that, and volunteering at countless things and school events, and with the bond and levy committees. I think that's a really important thing. But the part that we do get paid for, and no big bucks, mind you, but we do get paid for is the policy side, and that is something I think that is no small potatoes. Policy is really the chief component of this job, understanding the nuances of what makes good planning. We're going to be talking about planning tonight. We're going to have a lot of opinions on the planning and how we zone areas, or what what we approve as ordinances, or when we go into a budget. There's a reason why this city has been successful financially, as far as having landing in the black year after year, winning an award year after year. And it's definitely because of the staff, but it's because of this council's dedication to that policy aspect of what we do that I think is really vitally important. And so that is not lost on me at all. And so I think we have two very strong candidates. What I will say on the policy thing, and if I am forced to be comparative, is I heard a little bit more from Maggie tonight about her experience on policy and budget. I heard her do some homework. It referenced our legislative agenda, something that we spent all last week, several of us all last week, going through, you do that loop over and over again. You're trying to get those dollars. You're trying to get the funding for your state. And I think it's a really, really, really important thing, what we do. And then you come back here, and then you apply that through, all of the things that we have on our agenda tonight, sub-area development code, wetland mitigation planting, all of these kinds of things. And when you're in a multi-purpose government, that's a big job. And it takes somebody who's going to show up and do their homework. And so, Maggie, I appreciate that you showed up and you did your homework. Megan, I appreciate that you are very willing to learn, because there's value in being curious about all of these processes, because you can look at one, you can say, I just want to look at water code. And then that's it, and then you forget about, speed limits or road widening or construction or infrastructure or anything like that. So I really appreciate that. And I think that there is nothing wrong with your approach to that. And I appreciate you said you didn't know. But I did feel like Maggie was probably a little bit better on the policy side. So we have a hard decision before us tonight. But those are just my initial observations. So, council, at this time, if I'd encourage anybody else to say anything that would, help steer the discussion of where we are ultimately going to go tonight. Anybody else have anything that they want to add? Mr. Wells.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add, and that's pat ourselves on the back. We set policy. We try and do it for the good of the community. And the other thing that we're ambassadors for the city of Ridgefield. We sat in front of the diocese tonight, but we go to a lot of other meetings, and like up at the legislature in Olympia, that all of those things are part of the internal parts of where we have our own diversity, which we can share, and the city. A lot of the other cities are envious of the city of Ridgefield because of the policies and stuff we've done. So both of you would do a good job on that. So I've said enough, but good luck to both of you. And thank you again for applying.
Yeah, please. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Chipman.
So Maggie, one more thing I want to say to you. So when we asked you about your time commitment, and you made a comment about it was going to be something about what fit for you and your family. So I think what you need to know is if we all felt like that up here,
Yeah, I got you now. Sorry.
there's probably a lot of times that we would not be sitting here then, because we all have to give up time with our family to be here. And it takes a lot more time than what the public thinks. So you need to really think about that, because if my family was coming first for me, I would not be here. My husband would much rather that I was at home with him and my grandchildren, whatever. So it takes a lot of time to be here. It's a lot more than just coming to city council meetings. Last week we were in Olympia for 2 days. Next week we're going to be in Washington, D.C. for 3 days. Today we were 2 hours today at ribbon cuttings for businesses that were opening in the middle of the day. We have one tomorrow on Saturday. We have, all these things that we need to go to. So I'm just saying, that's how it is when you're a city council person, which is why it works well if you're not working. But if you're working and you're doing all these other things and you don't have control of your own schedule, it's pretty hard. So just another comment. Thank you.
Council, any other comments there? I will say that there is a component of working, yes, like here, I've this is something that maybe I've been a little sensitive to it in the past, because, I think several of us are working people. I have a full-time job, and I have a full-time job. It feels like sometimes doing this, but it does take some dedication. And so I that's what I would say to either candidate, whichever candidate we pick. I think there is an expectation that you're showing up for your community, that you're showing up, when council needs you, and sometimes it's not always ideal, right? And it's not convenient. Ask my kids that sometimes, but it's rewarding, and so I appreciate that. Well, one other thought I had, and there was a comment earlier about the importance of having differentiation, like people with different backgrounds, and Lee's a farmer, Clyde is a retired executive, Ryan's a teacher, I don't know what I am. I'm a marketing person, I guess, and and Judy's retired, but she spent years in government work, and Katie's a social worker. Like those are all components of that. I think that, well, you look at vocation is one thing, but you look at where they live. And I do like that, like as Ryan said, that Maggie lives on the east side. I also like that that Maggie is bilingual. And here's why that matters, is because if you're paying attention at school board meetings, you'll see that the number two or the number one growing demographic in this district is the Hispanic population. I mean, we have an emerging population here that is Spanish speaking, maybe bilingual, but like I think that's an important part of that, and being able to reach into that community portion of it, I think that's really, really important, council, as we consider that as an emerging generation of young leaders who we want to graft into our community and maybe speak English as a second language. I think that's important too. So, anybody else?
No, I'm fine.
Nobody? Okay. If there's no other deliberation, then I'll have Ms. Julie go ahead and pass out the ballots. We'll do our voting, and then we'll wait to tally it. There's a tie, who breaks it? There's, oh yeah. Yeah. Fight to the death. Yeah.
Mayor, the question that you'd ask is if there is a tie, what happens in the deliberative process that you are going through? If there is a tie, there is a revote, then there are multiple votes taken until you have decided that there is no change that will occur. So between each vote, there's additional deliberation. If there is a tie, there is additional deliberation, and then a revote. If there is a point where it becomes deadlocked, you come back at your next meeting to do that. There is a time limit associated with when the decision needs to be made. It's within 90 days of when the vacancy occurred.
Great. And as we're waiting for the votes to be tallied, I'll say the next step in this process is whoever is elected tonight will be sworn in. They will immediately join us up here at the dais and have to participate in the rest of the meeting. So God bless you both.
Get to.
Yeah.
Get to.
Get to. Get to. Do you want to tell us what the difference between a resolution and since we have a little bit of time?
Okay, well, all right, so, and I'll allow our city manager to maybe fine tune my answer, but a resolution is, like a binding position, whereas whereas an ordinance is like enforceable, almost like a law. Like an ordinance would be, you cannot park on the street after midnight, or you could be towed. And so a resolution is more of a statement of a position. Ordinance is has an enforcement component. Am I right?
Correct.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. Council has voted, and our new city council person will be Megan Hamilton. Yes, would you please come stand right up here, and then Miss Julie will go ahead and swear you in. Mm-hmm. grab your stuff and you're going to come sit right next to Councilor Favela. Again, I want to thank Ms. Butler. I do want to thank you for your putting yourself out there. Again, great candidates. We had a great pool of candidates this time, and really grateful that we were able to choose and make a hard choice. So, but congratulations, Megan.
Thank you so much.
Okay. We'll pause while, just for a brief moment, while some people exit, and then we'll move on with the next part of our meeting, which is a proclamation.
Not a resolution or.
No.
So, I have to admit I did not.
Okay, we are going to move on with our meeting. Next item on our agenda is a proclamation, and it is for Youth Arts Month, which is coming up in March. I'm going to read the proclamation. We have a couple of people from our community here to receive it, and then we'll do a picture afterwards. So this proclamation says that whereas Youth Art Month is an annual nationwide celebration established in 1961 that encourages support for quality art programs in our schools and recognizes the value of art education and a student's overall success. And whereas art education develops students' creative potential and improves problem solving and critical thinking skills by reinforcing and bringing to life what students learn in other subjects. And whereas experience in the arts cultivates valuable skills in such as imagination, creative expression, effective collaboration, innovation, cross-cultural understanding and adaptability, as well as personal growth outside the classroom. And whereas Ridgefield Youth Arts Month is a collaborative effort between Ridgefield School District, Dance Fusion Northwest, Ridgefield Art Association, and the broader Ridgefield community, demonstrating Ridgefield's dedication to providing opportunities for students to explore and grow through artistic expression in visual, literary, musical, and performing arts. And whereas Ridgefield Youth Arts Month aims to increase community understanding and involvement in art and art education through the various activities, workshops, and performances that take place during the month, beginning with the Ridge Association Color Run and festivities on the first Saturday of March. Now, therefore, I, Matt Cole, Mayor of the City of Ridgefield, do hereby proclaim March 2025 as Ridgefield Youth Art Month. And I encourage community organizations and residents to make a commitment to artistic expression and to arts education, dated this 27th day of February 2025. Sign it and I'll present it to you guys. Okay. We have Maureen O'Reilly and Mindy Evans. That's right. Yeah, come on up here. And do you want them to say something first, or do you want to? Okay. They don't want to say anything?
Matt, you can speak on our behalf.
I just did, so. Yeah. We'll have you. Here's you. Well.
Okay, all right.
Act like we like each other.
Okay, wants us to be here.
You all look great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll shake your hand first. Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
Okay, moving on in our agenda, it's time to approve the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second it?
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, we now have a presentation on the cost of services study. Ms. Lust, we'll go to you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Council's second touch on our development services cost of service study. And again, I have Jeff Swanson here from XSG Consulting, who has supported staff on our study of cost of building, land use and engineering, development review, and inspection fees in the city of Ridgefield. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Swanson for our presentation this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Lust. Council, it's good to be with you again. Jeff Swanson with XG Consulting, and welcome, Councilmember Hamilton. I only have about 70 or 80 slides to go through with extensive financial information on them, so hopefully we're all ready for that. Actually, this will be fairly brief. We wanted to get together with you again and talk through some of the questions from the last presentation. And so if we could, that slide there, just kind of a recap of why we're doing this study, and we'll talk about some cost recovery options, and then offer some, again, project examples and fee comparisons. So next slide. So why are we studying the cost of service? Local government has a role in land use and development regulation services, and so this is the business of what cities do, is regulating land use and development. There are costs to do that, and the fees that are assessed, it's wise to study those periodically and make sure that cities are not over-collecting or under-collecting revenues. Also to ensure that cities adhere to policy direction, such as development should pay for itself. Might be a policy that a city council would direct staff to adopt. This is also ensures fiscally sound and sustainable management of resources and the level of service provision. It's incumbent on cities to provide reliable, responsive, and capable customer service, and to be competitive for economic development opportunities. We talked previously about time versus cost, and how in the development world it's important to move projects along reasonably and expeditiously relative to, so that's the primary concern relative to the cost of fees to adjudicate permits. Other benefits of studying the cost of service, you understand better what your operational drivers of cost are, where you have activity that incurs cost on the operational side of delivering the service. And then to do some comparative benchmarking to understand where you sit relative to other jurisdictions providing similar services in the market that you are in. Next slide. Talked about financial reserves, and I just want to draw brief attention to how the city handles development services. It's an enterprise account, and so the costs and revenues for this activity are in a standalone account, much like your stormwater enterprise or your water enterprise or sewer enterprise. And your reserve policy for fund balance, unassigned fund balance in this account, is to always have on hand 60 days of the prior year's actual operating expenses and 10% of the prior year's actual revenues, plus any accrued separation amounts. So you're accruing those liabilities. And why you would do this, it's to stabilize the revenue and maintain the capacity to deliver those services. Development projects occur over long periods of time. Generally, the fees are collected sometimes in their totality up front, and so that revenue has to sustain the provision of service relative to that application over that long period of time. Sometimes developments take years from the time of the preliminary land use and engineering activities and construction of civil improvements before buildings actually go vertical on a development project. And because of this long period of time, it's important to retain staff through this cyclical nature of development. This helps ensure quality future development in the community. So there are peaks and valleys in the development activity over time, and the reserve funds help you sustain your staffing level over that longer cycle of development. And then it allows you to offer economic development incentives on the front end and recoup the revenue from that economic development activity after the completion. So certain development activities generate a lot of property tax revenue and sales tax revenue. And so those reserve accounts allow you to provide the service, land the economic development, and then recoup after the project is complete. So next slide. So stakeholder feedback, part of this study was extensive interviews with stakeholders in the development community, as well as many of the staff that do different functions related to development. So some of the key points, Ridgefield's fees are competitive or lower than other jurisdictions where the developers are doing business. The services are responsive, they're predictable and helpful. There's been improved coordination in the last few years between engineering and the building and planning side. And developers encouraged periodic process evaluation to look at ways to reduce the total processing time. So look at, you know, how many times you have to touch an application, where it's duplicative, and then the counterpoint from that, from the staff perspective, is working with applicants to ensure that the quality of their submissions on the front end is complete and it's good, and all the things that are being requested as part of an application are submitted. And this prevents this back and forth where an applicant submits an application, they receive a first round of comments, and if they're not then responsive to all of those comments, then there's another round and another round and another round. And so trying to shorten those numbers of comment rounds and shorten that cycle time involves the applicants submitting higher quality work on the front end, and that requires less staff time, processing time, and ultimately moves projects along faster. So inspections and repeated re-inspections was an area that was identified as staff of some uncompensated costs, and then there are challenges in tracking what we call the level of effort on permit cases. So that's how many hours does staff have to take in the different disciplines to complete the review and processing of a permit application. So there are systems out there. No system is foolproof in terms of determining how much time it takes to look at a particular application and adjudicate it. And then the applications themselves, if you think about, you know, Ridgefield is not a flat, featureless piece of land. There are wet areas and forests, there are slopes, and so while you may have a subdivision application or a commercial development application, depending on where that is in a different part of the city, it's going to take different types of review activities to adjudicate it because of the unique features of each individual project and property, if that makes sense. Everybody that was interviewed indicated that Ridgefield is a community that's rapidly growing. You're transitioning from a smaller city to a larger full-service city and community, and so that's comes with it some, you know, need to increase capacity on the city side to process development applications and so forth. So now recapping on the next slide, the cost of service. So we looked at data from January 1 of 2022 to the end of October of last year, and looked at the revenues and expenses, and essentially over that period of time, in this fund, there is a 28.2% annual deficit. And this is reflected in a change in development pattern that's occurred in the city over this period of time, where there's a shift from what used to be a primarily residential-driven development activity to, over this period of time, transitioning to more commercial development activity. So what this means is your reserves become more depleted because of that deficit, and ultimately the general fund has to cover a deficit in that fund. Okay, so next slide. So picking up on where we were at last time, if we look at this spreadsheet, that first column of data shows you your total revenues, total costs over this period of time from 2022 to 2024. And then we annualize those and look at what does an average year look like based on this development activity. And you see at the bottom that 28.2% level of deficit. Well, one of the things that we have talked about since the last meeting is this policy of external reviews and recovering the costs of external reviews. I want to emphasize that this study is backward looking. We're looking at actual data from this period of time, and so there are some implications that we can talk about of what that means going forward, but what we're analyzing is this period in the past, the most recent past, where this activity occurred, and we're drawing inferences from that data, right? So with respect to these structural reviews, with respect to external reviews, currently the city only recovers the cost of structural engineering, structural reviews of applications. The city previously recovered the full cost of external reviews, but had to stop this practice because there were some issues with latent billing of the external reviewers. So an applicant would receive a permit, and then a reviewer months afterwards would submit their invoice to the city. The city would send that to the applicant, and this created some friction. So the city has revised those procedures, and starting with the structural reviews, and has a consistent practice where they very quickly get invoiced for the review that's performed. They charge that out to the applicant, and so it's much more timely. So the process that was not working has been fixed in this period of time, and could be expanded to include all of the external reviews that the city has to charge out. This would reduce that level of deficit. So if you look back over this period of time, there was a little over 1.1 million in external review costs, so about 400,000 annually, and that would cut the deficit down if there was 100% recovery of those costs to a little over 10%. So that's the key point of this slide, is that switch from not recovering the full cost of external reviews to recovering, and how much that impacts that deficit. So any questions on that before I move on to the next slide?
Council, any questions on that before we move on?
I'm sorry, can you clarify for me, was this showing the 100%? Is that what you said? No.
No, so the implication is to fully recover the cost, you'd have to raise your fees 28% over what you're currently doing. But if you change that policy and you direct staff to recover all of the external review costs, then the increase that's needed is 10%, a little over 10%. So it brings that necessary increase down fairly substantially. Okay? And so I want to kind of frame up these two regimes where you're either continuing the current policy or you fully recover those external reviews, because this next slide kind of slices and dices that up a little bit. Okay? So the next slide, what we're looking at are your cost recovery options. And so there's these two regimes of cost recovery. And you see, if you want to recover at 100% your costs, under the current approach, it's 28.2% increase across the board, versus if you go with a full recovery of external reviews, it's 10.6%. If your policy is 90% cost recovery, then it's a 25.4% increase across the board under current approach, 9.5% under a full recovery of external reviews. And then 80%, 22.6% versus 8.5%. So is that fairly clear? Okay.
So the current recovery approach needs to be changed, is what you're saying here.
That is an option to consider. So
Okay.
that's why I lay it out, is because that's sort of a first question: do you want to fully recover external reviews or continue to do what you're doing and just recover the structural reviews? That's question number one. And then question number two would be, do you want to do 100% cost recovery, 90% cost recovery, or 80% cost recovery? And so I can show on subsequent slides project examples and what that looks like.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Let's go with the
Okay, yeah, we'll move
scenarios.
forward. Yeah, let's
Okay.
continue on.
So this is the single-family residence that we presented last time. So it's 2,400 square foot home, 1,000 square foot garage, covered porch and patio. And we're comparing the plan review and building permit fees, what your current cost is, that $47.70, to other jurisdictions: Clark County, Vancouver, Washougal, Camas, and Battleground. And then we show those first three under that column of Ridgefield. You see your current, and then below that, you have the current external review policy at the 100% level. So that would be that 28.2% increase would take you from $47.70 to $6,113. And then if you did 90% under that recovery policy, $59.80, 80%, $58.46. So then the next three lines, the next three rows, look at it if you do that full external review policy. And so that's that 10% increase. And so that gives you $52.74 would be the fee versus $52.22 for 90% recovery and $51.74 for 80% recovery. And then one of the figures I presented last time was a figure that we're calling market, which is sort of irrespective of the cost recovery, but more positioning you relative to your comps and giving particular weight to Camas and Battleground, which are similar in development patterns, similar in fee structure to the city of Ridgefield, and that figure was $62.76.
Oh, sorry, Mayor.
Councilor Davis.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Gentleman
All right.
first.
Sorry. So I just wanted to put it, so just, this is more of a point of clarification just for all of us. So to make sure my understanding is right, when we're talking about external review, we're talking about basically people going out of the house to do it, to get different services done. Can we, I think this is a good point as any, can we get some examples on the types and frequencies that might happen just as we deliberate that?
Absolutely, Councilor Davis. To start, I'll give an example. This is the one where we do recover all costs right now, is structural engineering. We do not have well, we do have a structural engineer on staff who has limited hours to dedicate to that. So most structural engineering gets sent out to a third-party reviewer who reviews that component of plans, sends those comments back to us. We send them back to the applicant. Right now, that cost of that third-party review is being recovered. Other examples where we're sending plans out to a third party, but basically eating those costs, we have a third-party land use planner who I send plans out to when we hit peaks in our volume. We have third-party engineering reviewers as well, third-party commercial development building reviewers. Those are the big three.
So I guess my follow-up question on that would be, and maybe I'm getting ahead of it. So would we be pursuing setting our rate and policy on this as a flat, whether that service is being done in-house or if it's being done third party, the cost would be X amount? So I guess my example is, say we know if we do it in-house, the cost is $100, but if we have to do third party, it's $150. Are we gonna assign it $150 if our in-house person's just unavailable and that's just the luck of the draw? Or are we gonna set it as a flat $125 just to be clean? And then whether it's done in-house or out-of-house, they get charged the same, but our cost recovery is at 100%. Does that make sense? Is it a case by case, or is it gonna be flat that just assumes?
So the current policy
fluctuation.
is what you just indicated. So the current policy is that they're charged the same rate.
Yes.
And then the public eats the rest of the cost.
Yes.
So that is the current, that's the deficit.
Yes.
So that's current. So if you maintain the current external review policy, that is the way it happens, is whether it's internal or external, this is the cost, and then if there's a differential in cost because we have to actually externalize that work, then the public pays that through general fund.
Yes.
If you change that, then yes, it would be, if you have to go to an external review, then you're paying whatever it is, the cost that is charged by that external reviewer.
So it's a case by case, it's not we're raising the entire level and charging the same whether it's done in-house or out-of-house. Correct? Does that make sense?
So when you say case by case, I'm sorry, I want to make sure that I'm clear on what
that's
you're
fair.
saying.
So, a project comes and it needs a certain service and we don't have somebody in-house that has the hours to devote to doing that, so we go third party just like we always have. Well, if the difference is $100 to $150, is it just that's the luck of the draw and they got the one that's $150? Or are we just raising the overall median to
the first
recognize both?
So the first one,
Okay.
and then also sometimes it's that we don't have adequate capacity with internal staff. Sometimes it is we don't have that
don't have it.
expertise.
Yes.
And so it's not luck of the draw of who you get internal or
Yeah.
external. It's we don't have anybody.
That's fair.
That
That's
does
fair.
that. And just for council's edification, we've talked about this before, but for the public as well, why would you go external? Why wouldn't you just staff up to that level? Because development happens in
Yeah.
peaks and valleys.
Yes.
And because development occurs in peaks and valleys, if you staff to the peak level volume, then you'll be laying off significant personnel when you come down off that peak,
Yes.
which is what we've seen in the residential side of it. So what you try to do is you try to staff to somewhere in that mid-range where you have adequate staff to meet most of the needs, but when you hit peak volumes, you have additional capacity that can come and be brought to bear.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I just want a clarification on the people that are actually engaged in the project. Anyway, all right, thank you.
Ricola, we're gonna go to Councilor Favela first, and we'll go to you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Counselor Ryan Davis asked too many questions and I forgot my question, but I'm sure it was answered.
Answered all your questions.
Well, no.
That's right.
Just a question. What is incorrect about actually charging the customer for the cost? Why is it we should be expected to cover part of that cost? And why, maybe I'm misunderstanding what I'm hearing, but I would think every different outsourced job has a different cost associated with it. So is it improper to collect and receive exactly what it cost us to do that?
Other jurisdictions in Clark County charge out at 100% for any external review costs. Some of them do it on just a flat cost basis. We get an invoice, we bill it to the applicant. Others charge administrative fees, so they've studied what does it cost us to handle this transaction and receive it, bill it back out, and add that to the cost of as part of their cost recovery. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, any other questions before we move on? Okay. Back to you.
So two more project examples. The next one is the 100 lot subdivision that we looked at last time. And this is looking at the land use fees, comparing the land use fees So you see again, similar structure and presentation of the data here, where you have the current versus other jurisdictions in Clark County, and then the different cost recovery policies modeled out beneath that. So the way you currently handle recovery of external reviews, and what the fee would be at the 100% level, 90% level, and 80% level. Below that, if you fully recover external reviews, again, 100, 90, and 80% levels, and then that market figure that was presented last time. And where that would put you, so you can see versus where your current fee is, what those increases look like, and how those compare to the other jurisdictions.
Could you just explain a little bit more the market rate that you came up with? Was it a blend between Camas and Battleground?
Yeah, it's looking at all of the comps, comparable jurisdictions, and some of them, so there are similarities between Ridgefield's fee structure and the other jurisdictions, and then there are great dissimilarities. So if we look at the prior project, Clark County was very low compared to the other jurisdictions. Now, they have other fees that they charge that are not plan review and building permit that probably bring that up closer to what everyone else is doing. But they are a county jurisdiction versus an incorporated city, so there are some differences there. And so where you're most similar in terms of market is to Battleground and Camas. And so those are given heavy weight in looking at the market and just kind of, it's basically like if you're running a business and you have access to your competitors' pricing information, you're looking at what level of increase is sustainable given where the rest of the market is.
Okay.
Right? And you derive, well, what does that equate to in terms of cost recovery from that? Right?
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a backwards loop in looking more at a market-driven fee.
Gotcha.
And so we're looking at all of those data points as we assess, well, where should we put fees?
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions on this example? Yes.
Yes, please, one more. Have we had any discussion with the users regarding our fees? If we were to raise them, would they say, forget Ridgefield, they're too expensive? I just struggle with the fact that we lose money or we're not recovering what we're paying to provide these developers, builders with what they need.
Yes, part of the stakeholder interview process was talking to folks in the development community who build in Ridgefield, but they build in other jurisdictions as well. And what we heard from them, nobody is excited about increasing fees or increasing costs. But the value is that in Ridgefield, they get very timely, responsive service. Other jurisdictions, they do not. There are some in Clark County that you can hear a lot of stories about. And I did hear a lot of stories about where they would pay more to get more responsive service.
So would it be fair to say timeliness is more important than the cost?
That is what they conveyed. And that timeliness is comprised in essentially what's the carrying cost of the project for another 30, 45 days while there's this, waiting for comments from the jurisdiction or responding to comments and so forth. That's, making payments to the bank, interest costs, all that stuff. And so the faster those things can turn around from the developer's perspective, the better it is and the more cost effective it is for them.
Thank you.
I know. Sorry, I just have one. Sorry, I have one more thing. In looking at this, when you say go to 100% recovery level, 100% always sounds very absolute and high, but if I'm looking at all of this correctly on the other slides, if we went to 100% full recovery, it really only puts us right at medium or below compared to all the other jurisdictions, correct?
Yes, you're still very much in the hunt when you look at the
Okay.
comparables.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we can continue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the third example is commercial project, and this one we looked at the land use fees and the plan review and building permit fees, so that looks a little bit busier. But if you look at the estimated totals as you move across, you see Ridgefield's current fee, Clark County, Vancouver, Washougal, Camas, Battleground, and then you see that same structure of fee options presented beneath that Ridgefield column. So that current cost external review, cost recovery versus fully recovering external reviews, and then that market figure. And so, next slide, what we're seeking direction on is sort of that A-B question, right? Continue what we're doing on external cost recovery, or change the policy and fully recover external review costs. And then the subsequent question is, do you want to recover it 100%, 90%, or 80%? And with that direction, those 2 points of direction, Ms. List and I will prepare the fees, and she will bring them back to council for presentation.
Great, okay, thank you. Council, additional questions for Mr. Swanson and Ms. List?
Well, I can.
Oh, yes. Sorry, yes.
As I said, I just have a very, very difficult time with the idea that it costs us $100 to do this and we're charging $88. When I was in business, I would be out of business quickly if I did that on a regular basis. So I'm in favor of recovering our actual costs.
Okay. Other councilors, Councilor Davis?
Yeah, and I guess just to clarify for our own deliberation, we have two different avenues to get to full cost recovery, like Councilor Burkle is advocating for. One involves true cost of third party, and the other one involves our current policy for third party, but then it rises everything up for everybody else. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
So there's two avenues to get to full collection. It's just how do we want to almost, if we decide there, then it's almost like which of the third party stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Could you go back to that slide that showed those, I think,
Which example would you like?
yeah, probably that one.
There was a slide 8 sort of shows the summary of percentage increases.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be good.
Is that maybe the one you're looking at, that one?
Yeah, maybe that one, and like go back and forth between those, but yes. Okay. So council, do you have any direction for staff on this, on which we should go? Is it cost recovery for external reviews or full recovery is kind of what we're looking at?
I would prefer full recovery. Thank you.
Great, okay. Mayor Pro Tem, we would too, okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm in the full recovery camp as well. I think that I just want to make sure that we're covering costs, and I don't want to pass anything on to our taxpayers for the stuff that developers are ultimately paying for. And it seems like we can ensure the expediency of getting those plan reviews done and everything. So if that's the most important thing, then let's recover that money for our taxpayers. Anybody else have a thought on that? Councilor Hamilton, it's okay if you don't, I just.
Full recovery makes sense to me
Okay.
as well, just sitting here listening to everything.
Great, okay.
So, council, I think we have what we need on this. There's no action being requested this evening. The direction that you have just given us is perfect. We will bring back an actual master fee schedule that implements that approach. And then you'll get to see fee by fee how this actually changes the dynamics of the overall fee structure. So that will come back, and that will be an action for the council, but not until then.
Great, okay, thank you staff on this one.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, moving on to our first item of business tonight is going to be resolution number 659, the Mark's intent to annex. Ms. Luss, back to you again.
Thank you again, Mayor, and good evening again to council and members of the public. This agenda item is an intent to annex. Before I get started, I'll just note that annexation is a multi-step process, and this is the first step in the process. So any action council takes tonight will be to authorize moving forward to the next step of the annexation process. It will not be to approve or deny the annexation. All right, so the request is being made for the Marks property, which is in the urban growth area just east of the easternmost city limits. It's located just south of the Greeley Farm subdivision and just east of the Urban Downs subdivision. It's actually two parcels. The main one is the square, and that is 10.59 acres, and then the flagpole accessing that square is technically a separate parcel that's 0.61 acres. So the overall acreage is 11.2 acres. All right, this property is designated urban low density in the currently effective comprehensive plan. Per the zoning code, urban low density properties that are annexed into the city are required to be designated either residential low density 4, residential low density 6, or residential low density 8. Our 2016 comp plan actually shows the future designation zoning on this property as RLD 6. So as currently proposed, that is the zoning that would be assigned upon annexation. That is the same zoning designation as those two adjacent subdivisions I mentioned, Greeley Farms to the north and Urban Downs to the west. Per the applicant's introductory narrative statement, the intent is subsequent to annexation to subdivide the parcel for residential use. That said, the adopting ordinance for annexation would not lift what's called the urban holding overlay on this property. That's an overlay that stays in place until infrastructure is available to the site that would support those urban levels of development. State of Washington offers a number of paths to annexation. Ridgefield's practice has been to use the direct petition method. A couple key points about that. First, it is property owner initiated. The process starts with the property owner making an application to the city to initiate the annexation process. And then the other point about the direct petition method is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a multi-step process. The first step, which we're at now, the intent to annex, requires authorization from property owners representing 10% of the total taxable value. The second step, subsequently petition to annex, that percentage bumps up to 60%. There's a single property owner here, so we don't really have to do the math. They have signed, they represent 100% of the ownership, which easily clears that threshold. All right, so the objective for you, council, this evening is to decide whether the city will accept this notice of intent to annex and authorize the applicant to move forward with the next step in the process, which is the petition to annex, which would then come back to you for a public hearing. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor, for any questions.
Great, thanks, Ms. Lust. Okay, council, so intent to annex from the Marks property. Questions, comments at this point from any one of you? Mr. Wells.
Okay, I got 2 or 3 questions. The 0.6 tenths of an acre, the flag on the flag lot that's going to it. Is there any other access to that parcel from city streets?
There is actually one access point that is already in place. If you look, it's hard to see on the map that you're looking at. Just to the north of the subject parcels is Greeley Farms. The applicant for this annexation is Holt Homes, working with the property owner. Holt Homes is the developer of Greeley Farms. There is a stubbed roadway to the south edge of Greeley Farms that you can see on their plat that could provide access to this parcel, and it is from the same developer.
Okay.
So that would be the northern, I mean, you have the flag that could get you access from the south as well, but that one from the north is certainly one that is a pre-existing stub.
And the reason for my questioning that is, I was wondering whether it was going to be a flag lot yeah, a big flag, but everybody would have sprinklers in their house.
Okay, other questions or comments, council? Councilor Davis.
I get, Claire, just to verify, the parcel that's just to the west of the flag, is that in city limits?
No, the parcels to the west of the, or you mean the flag or the flagpole?
I mean the flagpole.
The flagpole, okay, gotcha. The parcels immediately to the west of the flagpole are not in the city limits, but they are in the urban growth area.
Okay, so our city limits would technically have this fun little flag that comes out, right?
They would have a flag, yes.
Okay.
So looking at them, just for everyone's edification, the colors aren't super distinct on this GIS map, but the darker tan is in the city limits. The lighter tan is in the urban growth area, but not the city limits. And then farther out, the kind of off-white is neither. That's purely county jurisdiction.
That's what I thought. Okay, all right.
Okay,
That's in the city.
Councilor Favela.
Just out of curiosity, what is the point of that? Is that for a road or what is?
That's their current driveway.
That's their current driveway, off of 259th.
Wow, fancy.
Okay. So, Ms. Lust, it looks like the applicant's intent is to subdivide it, and so it's going to be whole homes. And this would, like, one of my questions, I think you answered, is that this would be a part of Greeley Farms, essentially?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
With assuming the current applicant moves forward and becomes the future builder of the property, it would essentially be an additional phase of Greeley Farms.
Okay, so operating off of that assumption, if they were to fully annex and develop there, is it too early to say like how many dwelling units could be built there?
Yeah, well, that's not net though. So what Mr. Stewart was saying is sort of the quick and dirty calculation would be 6 units per acre, 11 units. 11 acres, 11 times 6, 66 units. You have to subtract out area of that for critical areas, roads, storm facilities. So that's like your very upper number, basically.
Yep. Okay, great. Council, other questions at this point? Any concerns?
One question I have, the bottom of the flag, is that 259th?
It is.
Okay. So then will we have to, I see where we have city there, will we have to assume responsibility for 259th, or will that still be in the county?
The city would assume responsibility for a driveway width piece of 259th. Policy is that annexations are required to include the full width of any adjacent right-of-way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got it, okay. Any other questions, council, for staff? Okay, this is a business item. It is a resolution, Councilor Davis, and so I would go ahead and ask for a motion if we want to approve this.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 659, the Mark's intent to annex.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments at this point, council? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Moving on. Okay, our next item of business is second reading of an ordinance number 1440, the Carty Road Sub-Area Development Code. Ms. Lust, to you again.
I'm sorry about that. Thank you again, Mayor. The agenda item before you now, as you said, is the second ordinance reading for the Carty Road Sub-Area Development Code. This is a topic that council has seen a number of times, but for everyone's knowledge, I am going to briefly go through some background on the project that has led us to this point. All right, so when we're talking about the Carty Road sub-area, we are talking about the area outlined in orange on this map. It is located along Carty Road, east of Hillhurst, south of Royal Road. Okay? It's approximately 275-ish acres. Back in 2019, a number of property owners in this area came forth through the process we just went through in the last agenda item and came to council and began requesting to start the annexation process. Council at that time said, time out, this is a larger area. We don't want to see parcel by parcel annexations until there is a plan in place that guides future development for this whole sub-area. And that is the Carty Road sub-area plan. So we began a planning process in 2019 that involved a lot of work with the property owners in this community to figure out, okay, without a sub-area plan, people can start annexing, and once they're annexed, they can start developing at typical densities, typical development standards that you see for any other residential neighborhood in Ridgefield. But with the sub-area plan, you have the chance to say, okay, what could that development look like that is different and unique from other areas in Ridgefield, given this unique context of the Carty Road sub-area, which, as council knows, is a beautiful semi-rural area on the south side of the city. So we got that started, made a lot of excellent process, went through visioning, guiding principles for the sub-area plan, and then COVID happened, so we took a small 2-year break and came back to our stakeholder groups in 2022 and picked up that process again. And sort of went back to those questions of what makes the Carty Road sub-area different, and how do we translate that into goals and principles for future development in the sub-area. In summer 2022, council adopted a Carty Road sub-area plan. And so that sub-area plan is on the books and is our guiding light for this implementation process coming up with development standards. I'll quickly go through the adopted Carty Road sub-area guiding principles that were adopted in 2022 as part of that plan. There are 6 of them. They are: respect the rural and agricultural heritage of the area by protecting existing land uses and conserving open space. Create quality design through design standards and landscaping requirements. Respect existing development patterns in the Carty Road sub-area. Protect natural areas and buffers along the G Creek corridor. Provide transportation options that promote the safety of all users, motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians, and improve emergency vehicle access and evacuation options. And provide a range of development options for landowners that allow flexibility to retain existing uses and meet development regulations and state land use laws. With that plan adopted, our next step became implementation. And any long-range planning document, such as a comprehensive plan or a sub-area plan, a key part of implementation is coming up with development code that takes that vision and those guiding principles and translates it into standards that any future developments have to follow. So beginning last year in 2024, we presented our Planning Commission and Council with a first draft, a first cut at those development standards. And I have slides coming up that kind of show the main points of that version and subsequent versions that we'll go through. Got a lot of really thoughtful feedback on draft 1 from our appointed and elected bodies, as well as our stakeholders, property owners in that sub-area. We used a lot of that feedback to refine and come up with a second draft and went through the same process with that. And again, got a lot of really thoughtful, responsive comments on that draft, responding to the changes between draft 1 and draft 2. That went to council. That was the public hearing and first ordinance reading was on that second draft. At that point, feedback staff got from council was great. We have these two options. We've heard a tremendous amount of feedback on both, a lot of valid points being made towards both of those options. What would development built under each of those options actually look like? Council asked for a better visualization of what the outcome would be. So with that, staff put together some examples that you can see around the city that looked like either one of those options. Council did their homework, went on some field trips, and got back to us with some new refined guidance on what the code should be producing. So that's where we're at now. We have a draft 3. Draft 3 has gone out for comment. Council has received comments. And that's what we'll be talking through this evening. So, back to my kind of penultimate point there, looking at comparable subdivisions, this was council's last direction to staff from a couple months ago. So, draft 1 of the proposed code really focused on sticking to quarter-acre lots, which is a basic RLD4, that's residential density 4 units per acre lot size. Quarter-acre, which is 10,890 square feet, with setbacks larger than a typical RLD4 subdivision. So an example out in our community that is kind of that straight quarter-acre lots is Zephyr Point off of Hillhurst. And this is what it looks like. Draft 2. Draft 2, based on feedback to draft 1, looked at bumping down that minimum lot area, keeping the same overall density, but reducing the minimum lot area down to 7,500 feet. Again, still having slightly larger setbacks than your typical standard urban subdivision. So I just heard someone say they can see their house, so you're welcome. So this is Royal Terrace, Royal View off of Royal Road. This is a subdivision that averages RLD4, minimum lot area is around 7,000 square feet. An example of what that looks like built out. Another example with lot areas generally similar to what draft 2 would produce is Osprey Point, slightly older subdivision farther north on Hillhurst. Again, kind of the products and lot area and general sort of spacing that is produced there. All of these examples have kind of followed either draft 1 or draft 2 in terms of lot area and overall density. What they don't provide that we heard needed to be a unique feature of the Carty Road subarea is larger setbacks, creating more yard space, usable outdoor space on individual lots for folks in any new developments in Carty Road. So to find examples of larger setbacks in the city of Ridgefield, we actually kind of have to go back in time to subdivisions that may have just been built but were approved a very long time ago. One example, Taverner Ridge Phase 5, some much larger lots there, as well as some larger, particularly rear setbacks on those lots. And then just west of the high school, northwest of the high school, Wishing Wells Estates is a subdivision that is actually generally half-acre lots, which is not a lot area that is legal to create in city limits anymore. I believe this was built out under county jurisdiction. But again, an example of much larger setbacks, not just larger in general, but larger in proportion to the placement of the home on the property, if that makes sense. So, council, you all came back from your field trips, site visits, and what we as staff heard from that was this. Wishing Wells, love how it looks, understand that those lots are oversized compared to what can actually be built in the city at this time. So looking at that general development pattern, scaling it down to quarter-acre lots. So what staff heard from that was some variety in lot sizes, but not as much as the previous draft code, and large setbacks that allow for that wide usable outdoor space on individual lots, as well as some features like that sort of gentle, well-planted landscaping along Hillhurst Road, seeing something like that along Carty Road. All right, so now we're gonna look at what that meant in terms of changes made from draft 2 to draft 3. This first slide has lot areas and average density. Proposed change from draft 2 to draft 3 would be increasing that minimum lot area, not all the way back up to a quarter-acre, but up to 9,800 square feet, which is about 90% of a quarter-acre, to allow for a little wiggle room, requiring straight, like each lot is exactly a quarter-acre, just is not realistic, like geometrically for any property. We don't, as someone mentioned earlier, Ridgefield isn't like a flat, featureless piece of land. We've got a lot of topography, a lot of sensitive environmental areas, and lots of weird shapes. So having some variety built in is important to create a code that works. Okay. This slide shows setbacks. Draft 3 is based on that example, wishing wells, basically taking your typical wishing well setbacks and cutting them in half, down from a half-acre lot scale to a quarter-acre lot scale. So you can see there that resulted, in comparison to draft 2, increase in lot width, minimum lot width, increase in minimum rear yard setback, and sort of a middle ground number for minimum side yard setback compared to the previous drafts. Again, the guidance from the sub-area plan that was adopted is setbacks are greater than typical RLD4 setbacks. Okay. Before we move on into more column comparisons, what would this mean in terms of a building envelope? I cannot stress enough that this is not to scale. I made it in PowerPoint. But to illustrate kind of what this would actually look like on a lucky rectangular residential lot, 9,800 square feet, roughly 151 by 65, with that 65-foot lot width minimum. Taking the proposed 20-foot front yard setback, 40-foot rear yard setback, 12-foot side yard setbacks, leaves a little over 3,700 square foot building envelope. And that envelope would need to accommodate a house, garage, and any covered patio areas, so the structures. Okay, and you can see if you started adjusting any of those numbers one way or the other, you get a larger or smaller rectangle within your rectangle as your building envelope. I think I will go through the rest of the table, and then we can circle back to that for discussion if needed. All right, so back to our comparison table. This is basically your buffering features. Perimeter compatibility landscape buffers, this has pretty much stayed true throughout the versions of the code, is having a perimeter compatibility landscape buffer between a new subdivision and adjacent residential properties that aren't developed and aren't developing native plants. Along the main corridor through the sub-area, which is Northwest Carty Road, the last draft version, we toyed with this idea of making that have the same requirements as Hillhurst, Royal, and Pioneer, which are those sound walls you see with a little bit of landscaping in front of them. This version kind of dipped back from that, no more wall, but a little bit wider landscape tract compared to what you see on those other arterials. Okay, another thing we played around with in the last code version, cottage housing, took that out. Carty Road right-of-way cross-section, it's hard to talk about the sub-area without talking about the road, and I just want to reassure everyone that this version of the code still makes reference to the engineering standards, which adopted the cross-section from the sub-area plan and have all the technical specifications on that. Finally, impacts to critical areas and buffers. A little give and take here with the new proposals for lot area that have that larger minimum lot size from the past version, 9,800 versus 7,500 square feet, as sort of a concession to, again, a lot of critical areas, a lot of uneven topography, uneven lot geometries, allowing limited critical area buffer averaging, which is something our code does allow elsewhere in the city, through a master plan and in compliance with the sub-area plan. So what that looks like is basically you have, say, a wetland, and then the area just outside of the wetland is a buffer. And buffer averaging allows you to decrease that buffer in some areas and increase its width in other areas to accommodate development patterns. Okay, so those are the changes between proposed draft 2 and proposed draft 3. I will at this point turn it back to council. After I briefly check my next slide, okay, I'll turn it back to council for your discussion and questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Lust. Okay, council, our turn. Questions for staff or thoughts on draft 3 tonight? Yes, Councilor Favello.
Thank you. Okay, I have a few things. I guess, what is the plan with Carty Road? Because, you know, we hear from, I have taken a field trip and I look at the area, and it's not a professional term, but Carty is sketchy at best. And if you put high-density houses back there, is it feasible and is it safe to have that many people traveling on Carty Road as it is right now in that area?
Yeah, so to answer that question, traditionally, roads are required to come up to standard as adjacent parcels develop, with the understanding that that could create some really tricky patchwork situations along this corridor, which really deserves to be looked at as a whole. Our Public Works Director, Mr. Green, has come up with a plan that would initiate after adoption of code that would be a coordinated infrastructure plan, and I will turn it over to Mr. Green to give some details to council on what that would look like.
Thank you. And Ms. Lust actually hit the nail on the head. This is one where we have a narrow two-lane country road that doesn't have any shoulders. It has a lot of curves, does not have any infrastructure. There's no water nor sewer or even electricity as above ground poles. So what we would do, moving ahead with the adoption of the standards, is then what do we need to do to lift the urban holding, which does need to have the urban provisions and services in place. So a coordinated plan in this case would be get the developers together, look at that section from Hillhurst to wherever it was on the eastern side of that sub-area, and craft a coordinated plan to not only provide the road and the trail that's on the south side in that cross-section, but also the water and sewer lines, and have them done at the same time. So it's a composite coordinated project rather than piecemealing it. I have my eye on the intersection of Carty and Hillhurst, and there's a variety of reasons why. We have, as you know, we did receive a grant
to put in an enhanced crosswalk at that intersection to get students and others to the schools. We also know that that is the endpoint of one of the alternatives from the South Connector study. So with that in mind, there's a lot of probably high potential future traffic coming into that intersection that needs to be addressed with whatever we do now. And so this will include a traffic analysis that looks not only the impacts of these several developments that are lining up ready to jump, but also what's the longer term traffic look like and determine what the long term plan is for that intersection of Cardy and Hillhurst.
Okay, I have one more, sorry. And then when we talk about native landscape tract, that buffer, does this mean that, just for my own clarification, if we have this beautiful natural area and we need to keep a native landscape tract between, different properties, does that mean that a developer could come in, wipe everything out, and then replace it with native landscape? Or does it mean that they need to not cut down that native landscape and keep that intact as the natural buffer?
I would say, as written, that is not clear and should be clarified based on council's direction this evening.
Okay. That might be something we clarify. So if that was to be something you would want to clarify, you'd probably make that amendment to a potential motion tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, I think you have a question.
Yeah, so most of this is, is fine, except for this 40-foot setback on the backyard. I guess I don't know how we came up with that or why we came up with a 40-foot backyard. We are telling people that they can build ADUs in their backyards that are 6 houses per acre right now, right? And we're encouraging people to do all kinds of things like that. So I'm not sure why we're insisting someone have a 40-foot backyard.
It's a proposal. It's based on the observed setbacks in the Wishing Wells subdivision, which again, we heard back from council to create a code that would produce something similar to that. It's about, half the size though, because those are half-acre lots. Typical rear yard setback in Wishing Wells is about 80 feet. So that's where that 40 number is coming from in this proposal.
And like you said, Wishing Wells would not even be legal at this point.
That's
a half-acre lot is definitely so. And I didn't go on these trips to look at these places. I don't know who did in the council, but you didn't go either?
I never did.
Yeah, I didn't even know about them, but did you go?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So anyway, evidently Ryan and...
It was a secret.
It was a secret trip.
It was a VIP.
Yeah.
It was a VI. Oh, we weren't
You
important
have a
enough to
gold
go.
card.
Okay, so anyway, but I guess I just have to say that I think that's an excessive amount of requirement for somebody to have for a backyard. 40-foot seems really excessive to me. I don't think that in this day and age that we can really afford to require somebody to have that large of a lot, so.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead and answer. Was that a comment or a question?
No, that was just a comment.
Okay. That's good.
We need to make a change there.
Yeah. Okay. Councilor Davis.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess my first question is in regards to the 9,800 mark. I saw in the notes that is set basically at 90% of a quarter acre, and since we are allowing rounding, I see in your note on page 4 of attachment C, average lot for area subdivision is exactly 4 units per acre. 4 units per acre is 10,890, and so we are like 1,000 square foot smaller than that, and then we allow rounding. And the note is the average lot area would be between 9,800 and 12,446 square foot. as you said, we have gotten some commentary about this plan that's come forward. And one of the things that stuck out to me that's in contrast with that is the statement that between, open space and everything else, like, if we set it at this, everything is going to be basically at 9,800 and you can't really go larger. So I guess I'm trying to see where maybe there's a disconnect on what some people on the development side are seeing and what our statement is.
So with the proposed standards, they do allow variety in lot area.
Okay.
It's not as much variety as you would see under the previous version of the draft, which allowed lots down to 7,500 square feet.
Yeah.
We allow in our existing code, and it's proposed for the sub-area code as well, for RLD4 zones on the average density. Instead of saying it has to be exactly 4 units per acre,
Yeah.
we allow rounding because it's
Yeah.
just practical. So basically, the allowed density is between 3.5 and 4.499 units per net developable acre. Doing the math on this, you sort of have that as one limiting factor, and then your minimum and maximum lot areas as the other limiting factor on your math you're doing. So basically, a subdivision with an average density on the low end of that range, 3.5, your average lot area is going to be 12,446 square feet. A subdivision with an average density at the high end of that range, 4.49 units per acre, your average lot area would actually be about 9,700 square feet, bumped up to 98 based on the minimum lot area.
Yeah.
So that's the range of average lot areas. To build a subdivision that hits your maximum density, 4.49 units per acre, yes, all of the lots would have to be 9,800 square feet. But if you're elsewhere in that allowed density range, you're going to achieve that through a variety of lot areas. There are multiple ways to get to that average.
Yeah.
You can have, let's say you're hitting an average density of exactly 4 units per acre, so quarter acre lots. You can do that with every single lot is a quarter acre. You can do that with half your lots are at the low end of the range and half are at the high end.
Yeah.
You can do that with the majority of your lots towards the low end and then a couple at the super high end to kind of make that average.
Yeah.
But there is a range.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I just want to make sure because one of the goals of the original plan was to have lot size variety. And I do like the density goal. It's just I want to make sure that whatever we decide when it comes to actual implementation, that was something we talked about last week, where there's these good ideas, but guess what? Like off-street parking. When it comes to implementation, it's going to do sort of the reverse of what you're after. And I just want to make sure that we're asking those questions so that we don't end up in a situation where it's like we have this and yeah, it could be done like that. But if we're getting told that, well, honestly, if I'm looking at these rules, like everything's pretty much going to be 9,800 square foot, that's what I want to know. You know what I'm saying? But it sounds like with the rounding, staff is confident that we have enough flexibility that they could, we could take it from a 3722 footprint or envelope to how much do you think? Like on the high end, if they got to the 12,446?
I don't have a number for that.
Okay, that's fair. I appreciate it.
And it would,
Okay.
Councilor Wells.
I'm going to piggyback on to Councilor Chipman's comment. The 40-foot backyards, are we going to exclude any granny homes in the backyards? Is that legal?
You mean like ADUs, right?
An ADU,
Yeah.
right? An ADU.
So as proposed, ADUs are a permitted use in the sub-area. ADUs can be either detached or like a basement unit as part of a house. Yeah, I would welcome any further direction on that from council, including any language about different setbacks or exemptions.
Tiny home. Okay, thank you.
There was a comment along the way, and I don't disagree with it. It's just saying that, you know, like you're creating some excessively large buffer areas with a 40-foot rear setback. And maybe the suggestion was to reduce that to 30 feet. And I think that would be a fair compromise there because, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, I think you're going to get some, and depending on like where the critical areas are, you might end up with some excessive areas. So I think for that, I'd be open to an amendment to this that would say, hey, 30 feet instead of 40 feet. And it still gives builders that buildable area, with the other setbacks to do a fairly good size building footprint there. So, yeah.
Especially if you want to build a one-level house on that kind of a lot.
Is that on?
Which I would think that there would be a lot of,
Is it on, man? Yeah, there it is.
I think there's a lot of need for one-level homes and probably a lot of desire for them. And in this kind of a situation, in this setting, this is going to be a beautiful place to live, and I think it's going to be probably an upper end, probably in the higher price range. And so I would like to see them be able to build more one levels, and so I think it would far more better fit on a 30-foot instead of the 40. Yeah.
For council's reference, on this example, 9,800 square foot lot, if you reduce that rear setback from 40 to 30 feet, the building envelope would increase to about 4,100 square feet.
Yeah. I would like to see us do that.
One thing we don't have a lot of, and I don't think we will ever again have a lot of it in this city is the things like wishing wells. If you drive around, we don't have something like that again. But what we do have a lot of is we have a lot of what you see in Pioneer Canyon. A lot of more density there on smaller lot size, sure. And I know it's not apples to apples, but I think maybe more comparatively is like Pioneer. Paradise, what is it called? Paradise Point. Yes, you see up there, and those are some larger homes on smaller lots. But if you drive up there right now, what you get is, those houses look like they're really on top of each other. So you're buying a big home, but you're like, reach out and touch your neighbor really close. And so what I like about the larger lot size is if the intent will be to build larger homes, that you are getting larger homes and you're getting more like that spread out look like we saw in the examples. And I think there's something positive to that because like there's just not something for that. What we do have a lot of also is we talked last week, like mixed use areas, right? Multifamily housing coming in here. And so as we talk about, we're throwing around the word variety, and we're talking about variety in this development in particular, but if you look at variety overall, we're losing that variety by building a lot more incorporating a lot more density in order to accommodate more houses. So, I don't know if we're really sacrificing that with 7,500 square foot lots, but it sure feels like with a 9,800 square foot lot, we really do preserve that level of true variety, to give that. And by the way, that was the original intent, was to preserve that rural feel that the Carty Road area has right now. Ms. Luss, I'm actually curious. There's a lot, we've seen a fair amount of annexations since we approved the sub-area plan. There are people who never plan to sell and never plan to develop, that's their forever place, and, will be impacted by this. Like, I don't know if we have numbers. I don't know if we can even guess on that, but where's the weight of people who are interested in developing their land versus people who are looking just going to stay there? Do we know?
So the map on your screen now shows parcels that have annexed to date. I think it's reasonable to assume that the owners of parcels that have annexed are looking towards future development. There's one parcel on there, Mr. Muckenstable's parcel, that is in the annexation process still. But other than that, that's sort of the split
Yeah.
at this point in time.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, like, council, as we're going through this, and again, I don't know if we're really, making a differentiation there, but like we honor the people who have decided to make that their home and to move there for a reason, right? And they wanted to have that more rural feeling there. And if suddenly you have a lot of more dense development around you, is that going to kind of impact what I guess they're, what they thought they were getting when we were doing the sub-area plan to begin with?
Quality of life.
Yeah. So, other questions or other comments at this point? Anything? Okay. So, what?
Are we ready to move forward with this and making an amendment to it, or what do we do tonight?
Well, we have options. So, so it's, I guess, if there's things that you'd like to amend, then I guess it's time to hear that.
And Mayor, just as a point of order, to field amendments, you need to first.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, first you have to make a motion on
Okay.
the underlying, and then you would amend whatever it is that you are considering.
Okay. I don't have the stuff up to make the motion, but.
What? Go ahead. Were you going to make a motion? Sorry.
Yeah, but I have two things that I wanted to add.
Okay, good.
And the-
Okay, good.
And the amendment, so what you would do, Counselor, is you would make a motion, and if there is a second to that motion, to bring forward whatever it is, whatever proposal it is that you would like to be considered, and then you have amendments. First you propose it, you make a motion, it's seconded, now it's on the floor for you to discuss or to amend. Then, if you have amendments that you would like to offer, you offer that as a motion. There is a second discussion on the amendment, and then it is either passed or not. And then if it passes, then that amendment is hung onto that original motion.
Okay.
So we add it to the original.
So, Council, I guess, yes, that's the procedural way to go about it if we're going to do an amendment. I guess before we get to that point of a motion, depending on whether I even, would support a motion with amendments or not, I'd be curious to know from you, like, what are the potential amendments that we're looking at?
So the amendments that I'm interested in are going back to the native landscape track and getting clarity on what that actually means in the buffer areas, and then also moving that 40-foot setback to the 30-foot setback.
Okay.
Okay, so same thing, all right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move we accept ordinance number 1440 on the Carty Road sub-area development.
Okay, it has been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 1440, the Carty Road sub-area development code as presented. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make an amendment to the proposal, including the native landscape track clarification, and then also moving that 40-foot setback to a 30-foot setback.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, so there is an amendment to the motion to include native plants along the buffers.
Yeah.
Native landscape tracks.
Well,
Clarification.
I don't know if we can have an amendment that asks for clarification. We have to have like an outcome.
Yes.
We can certainly, so the nature of the amendment was to prioritize the existing native plantings for consideration for the native landscaping buffer. That is what I heard. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you hear that? That is what we heard. That is something that we absolutely, that is implementable because we can certainly create that prioritization of existing native landscaping as they are developing the native landscape buffer required under the code.
Okay.
And usually, just to be clear, when we create implementing code like this, we generally say, and it's like when we're talking about using the existing slopes and the changes that we've made to the code, that you have made to the code more recently to require developers to actually use the existing slope, which they didn't in the past, is that it would be to the maximum extent practicable. So it gives that ability to say, okay, there are some circumstances where you just can't. So if that is appropriate as part of that, the motion for the amendment, then that is how we would draft that.
And the second part was a 30-foot.
Yeah, 30 foot, that was an easy one. 40 to 30, that, we got that.
Okay, there was a motion with amendments. It's been moved and seconded.
Now you need to vote on the amendment.
Correct.
Correct. So, all those in favor of the proposed amendments, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it for the amendment, so the motion to move forward as amended is now up for discussion.
Right. The main motion with the amendment that
Yes.
goes to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, discussion, council, on that.
No discussion.
Okay. All right, council, all those in favor of adopting ordinance number 1440, Cardi Road Sub-Area Plan with the approved amendments, signify by.
No, Julie has to do it.
Oh, I'm sorry,
call
yeah,
roll.
that's right, I'm sorry, yes, you do have to read.
I'm going to
Ms.
read the
Julie-
ordinance and then I'll call roll.
Yes, okay.
Ordinance number 1440, ordinance of the City of Richland, Washington, amending Title 18 of the Richland Municipal Code to establish development standards for the Cardi Road sub-area. And I'm going to go ahead and call roll. Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Favela?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Burkle?
Yes.
Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chipman?
Yes.
Mayor Onslow? Or, I'm so sorry.
Oh, he already left.
Mayor Cole.
Aye. Mayor Cole,
I
aye.
did this for 20 years, so my apologies.
Old habits die hard, I get it, okay. Okay, that ordinance passes, moving on. All right, our next item of business tonight is contract award for Pioneer Widening for IQ Credit Union Wetland Mitigation Planting component of the Pioneer Widening and 50th Place Discovery Drive Roundabout Project. Mr. Green.
Yeah, say that 10 times fast. Julie, could you put up the map of the proposal? So one of the elements of this project is we are impacting wetlands. It's a big project. And as you remember, some of you might remember last year there was, we were purchasing into a mitigation bank up near La Center as part of our wetland impact mitigation. This is the other part. And so on lands that actually the county owns, part of what the wetlands impacts would be on those properties. The other element of this is IQ Credit Union, in their proposal, also had impacts that they needed to mitigate. When we talked with them, and then talked with our kind of environmental biologists, it was best to kind of do these all in one place so you get a better quality wetland that way. And IQ Credit Union said, we're a bank, we don't plant, we don't maintain plants, we are a bank. So they gave us money in lieu of planting plants to basically blend with our project to do a whole bunch of wetland planting. That's what you see on this graphic. This would be in stages. It'll be over 3 years. The first this year, they would be going in about a couple weeks and starting to remove the bad stuff, the blackberries, ivy, and stuff that is not supposed to be there as far as mitigation. And then in April, before early May, do their first round of planting, and then repeat over the next couple of years. This is an overall 7-year process to make sure that the plants hold, that any adverse weather or anything that requires the wetland plants to be replaced or refreshed would occur over that 7 years, and the 7 years that period would end with the basically what we got is a nice wetland area with a lot of nice plants. As part of this, there would be volunteer efforts, like some of us have sloshed around Horns Corner, and are going to be sloshing around Greeley Farms Park to do some of these plantings. This is very similar, just bigger. We did put out a request for qualifications for consultants who would be doing this, not only just going out buying the plants and starting the planting process, but also organizing volunteers to help with the plantings. We did receive 3 submittals. After review of those submittals and interviews, staff selected Riparian Environmental, this top-rated firm, to negotiate a contract with, and that's what we're presenting to you tonight. So what is on that screen is pretty much what the 3-year plan is to plant, and then a 4-year monitoring and replacement management plan for the total of 7 years. Riparia's proposal is for $282,961, of which 56% comes out of the Pioneer Widening budget. The other 44%, $125,000, is from that money that IQ Credit Union has contributed to this as a fee in lieu. I do want to point out that Riparia has the Watershed Alliance as their lead for the volunteer events. And when they added up using the volunteers, and this community likes volunteering, the equivalent of that, instead of having them have consultant staff go do the work, the same amount of work, is a savings of about $125,000. This is not trivial as to what volunteers contribute to the community and to projects like this. So with that, we are requesting council action on awarding the contract to Riparia, and I stand by for any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Green. Council, any questions? Councilor Davis.
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is awesome. I guess the point that came up to me was like how quick this is going to happen, which normally I would say this is fantastic, but we've got a little bit of activity already going on in that area, and so I'm curious about the impacts that having a bunch of volunteers, where the logistics of, I mean, are they going to park at Ridgefield Dental? Like, has that been cleared? I'm just curious about the logistics, because we've already got part of that shut down, and yeah. How would that work?
That is an excellent question, and we actually are planning that this next Wednesday. We've invited this team, assuming council awards the contract, to take part in our weekly construction coordination meetings with active construction. The plan right now, and actually they've started coordinating with Dr. Cruzan, is to have weekend volunteer events launching from the parking lot at Mountain View Dental and working their way to the west, so they're staying out of all of the construction.
Okay.
IQ Credit Union, by the way, is interested in organizing and providing volunteers for these as well, as is Dr. Cruzan's office. So this is we're ready basically to launch starting next Wednesday is when the coordination meeting is, and then they're ready to get there as soon as possible.
That's awesome. That's cool to hear. Thank you.
Great. Council, other questions? Yes.
I may have missed it, but what it would be the actual start date of the volunteers going into the area and planting or getting rid of the other product?
The first one is more of a technical effort to pull out the blackberries and ivy and the bad stuff, which would be occurring in the next couple of weeks. Probably in April sometime is when there would be events happening.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, council?
Yes, I've got one. The only question I have, for them plantings and that, are they putting irrigation in for them for the survival rate of them natives?
We are still working with them on what needs to be done. We're not putting in permanent irrigation. This is meant to be something that establishes and then sustains itself without the need to provide continuous water. It is a wetland. And so the plantings are to, any irrigation that comes in, it's temporary just to get the plants established, which is a 2 to 3 year period. And then if there's any temporary irrigation that gets pulled out, there are other ways to water the plants too, other than pipes. So that's part of what riparian is hired to do.
In the past, I've seen where they've put up PVC pipe temporarily on top of the ground and get them established for a year or 2 years or whatever that way. And once they get established, then discontinue applying water to them.
Okay, if there are no other questions, council, I would ask for a motion.
All right. I make a motion to, the contract award for Pioneer Widening IQCU wetland mitigation planning component of the Pioneer Widening 50th Place Discovery Drive Roundabout project. For the amount of $282,000 and 960, or, shoot. $282,961. It's been a long day, and I don't teach math.
Do you want to do add contingencies?
And the additional $15,000 in contingencies.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the contract award for Pioneer Widening, the amount of, mitigation, wetland mitigation planning to Riparian Environmental for an amount of $282,961 plus an additional $15,000 in contingencies. Final discussion. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. Okay, we are going to move on to public hearings. This is a public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 1445, establishing a speed limit along Northwest Carty Road between Hillhurst and approximately 3,000 feet east of Hillhurst on the Northwest 2300 block of Carty Road. Mr. Green.
Thank you. Well, so that last item was a motion. This one is getting back to the ordinance thing of the ordinance resolution world. So, and you know, I've probably been here 20 times in the last year talking speed limits, so here we go again. Carty Road, as we've talked about, has been annexed in a number of cases, as Claire pointed out with the annexations. When they do occur, we annex the full right-of-way of Carty Road, and it's been working its way east from Hillhurst. What has not happened is we have not established a speed limit for those parts of Carty Road that have been annexed. And so if you go down Carty, you will not see a speed limit sign. It's unposted. In the county, that means 50 miles an hour. And so as things have progressed and as traffic has increased, there seem to be a lot of drivers who want to excessively speed along Carty Road. We've had at least the same curve sign knocked down 2 or 3 times in the last 6 months that our crews have had to resurrect because of that excessive speeding. The Regional Transportation Council's been looking at Carty Road as part of a Safe Streets for All study. And in your packet is kind of a cut sheet from that study, which there are a variety of safety measures that they are recommending as part of that study. And ways to reduce speeding is one of those. Now, there are other factors, other measures that are more project-oriented, which could be implemented as part of that coordinated, get the developers together improvement project for the corridor. That would definitely help with that. With looking at a number of requests we've had from citizens and those neighbors along Carty Road to do something, this is one of the do somethings we are looking at. We've done a number of speed studies along there, looked at the prevailing speeds. We've also looked at the sight distance and with Carty Road in the sub-area plan being a collector, the design speed, that those improvements we talked about earlier would be 35 miles an hour. And so with all of this, the engineering reviews, the looking at safety conclusions, outcomes of the safety study, the request here is to establish a 35 mile an hour speed limit, posted speed limit for the section of Carty Road that you see on this map. Now, Jill, if you go to the next map, The question is we've had several discussions about speed limits over the last few months. What does this mean in context of all the other speed limits in the area? Actually, it would make it consistent with what we did a couple years ago on Northwest 229th Street, along Hillhurst, along most of Royal Road, except for the temporary speed limit reduction that was put in place last fall. All are 35 miles an hour, which is pretty much what our arterials tend to be as far as design speed and posted speeds. So with that, this is an ordinance, and it does affect code, so a public hearing is a part of the process. We do want to point out that if council so desires, staff would be amenable to waiving the second reading of this, depending on the public comment that we received tonight. And with that, I will end my presentation.
Great, thank you, Mr. Green. And I'll just first say that I can't believe that would actually be 53. If you're going 53 there, my goodness. I doubt that's happening though. But council, any comments or questions for staff or each other on this one?
I do.
Councilor Davis.
Yeah. I like a lot of it. I guess I'm more curious than anything. The eastern edge of that 35 zone, how do we arrive at that? Because it seems like it's like one parcel over from like our urban growth boundary. Is there a geographic component as to what created that eastern edge of the 35 speed limit?
City limits.
Oh,
that's the eastern city limits of Kearney right now.
Okay. Okay. I see it now. Thanks.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where does the city limits end at compared to, I'm going to say, Bethel Church on that road?
It's at Bethel Church.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council before I open public hearing? Okay. It is now time for a public hearing. If you signed up with the city clerk prior to the meeting to address city council, your name will be called, and the city clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone or come forward to the podium. If you have not provided in advance to speak, notice in advance to speak during the public hearing, please use the raise hand feature located on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And if you wish to make a comment, the city clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone. For controls over the phone, press *9 for raise hand and press *6 to mute or unmute. Please state your name and limit your comment to 3 minutes. And a reminder that there will be no back and forth or interaction between the speaker and the council. This public hearing is now open.
I would like to speak in favor of this. I'm Roger Green, no relation to Chuck, maybe a friend.
Are you sure?
I own or am trustee on 43 acres along Carty Road, including 2424 Northwest Carty Road, 2620 Northwest Carty Road, 2712 Northwest Carty Road. We have 3 or 4 parcels that touch Carty Road. On the map that was up previously, the 90-degree corner at the northern point on that map, we've seen 15 crashes this year since the beginning of school. 3 of them have gone into the creek, and the drop into that creek is deep enough cars can go in there and be not visible from the road. I think 35 is a reasonable speed for this section of road. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. I'm Rich Young. That map with the speed limit is right at the end of our property on Carty Road, right across from Bethel Church there. I just want to thank Chuck for listening, and for council. I don't know if you've listened, but I've been talking about this for a couple of years, ever since the middle school went in and all the subdivisions out there. Let me tell you what, when they hit the bottom of the hill there heading east and come around that corner, they're doing over 50 miles an hour. I'll guarantee you. And not just cars, but the dump trucks, the heavy equipment trucks, they're all going over 50 miles an hour. We can't even get close to the road or even get to the mailbox because there's no time. We can't even hardly get out of the driveway because they're coming so fast over the crest, and we've met all the setback requirements for development for distance, but they're coming so fast that you have to really be careful to come out of the driveways. So thank you on that. And can I comment on the Carty Road sub-area? Is that permissible?
No,
I
not
can't.
during a
Okay.
public hearing, yeah.
I'll do that
Yeah.
offline.
Okay.
Yeah, my name's Kurt Weiss, South Royal Court. And I'm just asking maybe a little bit about what the disposition is on the splash pad as far as when it's when it's actually going to work.
Yeah, Mr. Weiss, so we will have a public comment section right after this, but this has to be relevant to the public hearing.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So hold that because
I had a couple.
You'll get a couple more minutes and we'll get to that. Okay, anybody else wishing to give public comment for this public hearing at this time? Miss Julie, anybody online?
Not seeing anyone online, Mayor.
Okay. If I have no one else wishing to make comment for the public hearing and hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Miss Julie, would you please read the ordinance into the record?
Thank you. Ordinance number 1445, ordinance of the City of Ridgefield, Washington, amending Ridgefield Municipal Code, Chapter 10.08, establishing a posted speed limit on Northwest Carty Road between South Hillhurst Road and a point approximately 3,000 feet east of Hillhurst Road and approximately 2300 block of Northwest Carty Road. That's a long one.
It's a long one. Thank you very much. Okay, council, this is first reading only. However, it is our prerogative if we would like to waive first, waive second, and proceed with a final motion at this point. And I would take a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we establish speed limit or accept ordinance number 1445, establish speed limit along Northwest Carty Road between Hillhurst and approximately 3,000 feet east of Hillhurst, Northwest 2300 block of Carty Road, and we waive the second reading.
Okay. So it has been moved, and seconded to include.
I'll second.
Yes. Okay. It has now been so moved and seconded to approve the motion as presented and waive second reading. Any discussion, council? Seeing none. Is this a roll call?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Miss Julie, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Councilmember Burkle?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Favela?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chipman?
Yes.
Mayor Cole?
Aye. And Mayor Cole. And yes. The motion carries. Okay, thank you, council. All right, it is now time for public comment. Anyone requesting to speak to the council regarding items not subject to a specific public hearing may come forward at this time. Please state your name and limit to comments to 3 minutes. For controls over the phone, press *9 to raise your hand and press *6 to mute or unmute, and please state your name. Thank you.
Okay. Kurt Weiss, South Royal Court. And as you heard the first time around, this is about the splash pad, just what the disposition is. Because we did see at one of our the coffee shop we go to, we did see the City of Ridgefield car parked over there and another person standing there, and they were looking like this. So I'm assuming something was going on. And the second thing is, a while back, it was proposed that artwork was going to go up over the overpass, and that the artist was going to do it himself, I guess, when he was done making it and put it up. I was just wondering if that could be brought back up and whatever the disposition of that is. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Okay. Other public comments for tonight? Mr. Green? Or Young, I'm sorry.
This is Rich Young
Yes.
again.
Yeah.
Green is back.
Chuck's over there.
With a green shirt.
Just a comment on the Carty Road discussion tonight. That we own 26 and a half acres, which is about 10% of the Carty Road sub-area. We've done a engineering, had a civil engineer look at it, to what we could do in there with 7,500 square foot lots. And because of the creeks in the area and, you know, looking at the natural areas and whatnot, with the 7,500 square foot lots, out of the 26 and a half acres, we could put in there 33 lots. You know, if your math is correct, that's about 3/4 of an acre per lot. So, and it's due to the setbacks on the creeks, or the creek areas, even though the creeks are down the hill 30 feet, and they roll over into it because they expand over 5 feet wide. The setbacks are 150 feet. So the backyards are huge, even with a 75-foot lot there. You know, they've got 150 feet to the creek, and there's nobody from there. There's nobody in between anybody. So you talk about a 30-foot backyard. No, they've actually got a lot more because of the open areas that are there. So just something for consideration to think about. A couple other comments I had. I don't understand why you have structural engineers reviewing structural engineers on you're concerned about how you pay for those structural engineers. When you have I've been in commercial development for 50 years, and a structural engineer of record, he's responsible. He's licensed and bonded, and he's responsible for the structural engineering. Why is there a structural engineer? It's always bothered me. Why does the city have to have a structural engineer review another structural engineer's work when they're the ones that are liable, and this city's structural engineer has no liability at all? Makes no sense to me. Just a thought. And the other thing to help keep costs down and move things along is that if staff would provide full disclosures on all the information necessary for permitting of any kind that goes through up front, instead of giving it to you in pieces as you get pieces approved. It would speed up that process for developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Anybody else wishing to give public comment this evening? Ms. Julie, anybody online?
Not seeing anyone online.
Okay, we will go ahead and move on to council and staff reports. Okay, council, start with Mr. Wells. We'll start at that end and we'll work away left, rightward.
I'm going to make mine short
Okay.
and sweet. There was lots of things I did last week. 36 hours of time for city business. With Olympia, Port, that's it. Mr. Burkle.
Thank you. Just have a few things to report. Probably the highlight of the week was being invited to go to Alene to participate in the 25th anniversary of the Cowlitz being federally recognized as a tribe. I didn't know much about the Cowlitz, and I had no idea how hard and long they worked to be recognized. It was a battle. I also like to point out that there were two people from Ridgefield who also really stepped up and helped, one being Councilmember Lee Wells and former Mayor Ron Onslow. Both were recognized during comments in the celebration. Also had city manager briefing. Attended the Port of Ridgefield meeting, a couple of things. This summer, they're hoping to finish the cleanup on the side streets that were polluted with the removal of all of the product from the port remediation. And also, there was considerable discussion regarding their Greeley building, which requires a rather significant restoration, would be the word, and quite costly. Also today, I had the privilege of attending ribbon cuttings for 2 new businesses in Ridgefield, one being Ridgefield Dentistry and the other being AT&T. It's always a pleasure to go out and welcome new businesses to our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Davis.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I too was in Olympia last week for Advocacy Days with the Association of Washington Cities. It was just a great opportunity for us to connect with our legislative delegation here from Southwest Washington and to create some new relationships as well. So that was definitely time well spent. Earlier this week, a little bit of prep stuff for State of the City that's coming up, and had a meeting earlier today even with the executive director of RTC, since I'm going to be pinch hitting for Mayor Cole next week at that meeting, so I was getting caught up to speed. And then I will be doing the color run on Saturday. I will report to you how I do. I do not intend to win, but, it's for fun, it's for the kids. So that's what I got.
Love it. Okay, great. Thanks. We'll go down to Councilor Favela next. Yeah.
Thank you. It has been a busy week. My husband and I have welcomed our exchange student from Japan into our home. So we're going on 3 weeks of her being with us. She speaks no English, and we don't speak Japanese. So we've been living off of Google Translate, but things are going really well, and she's loving school and our family, and it's been a blast. I attended the Fire Commission meeting today. They did a bond presentation in preparation of trying to get our new fire department. They're in good standing regarding debt capacity with a AA negative rating. So looking forward to kind of seeing what they decide to choose, whether it goes from a bank or a bond. There was different conversations on how they would facilitate the financing of this. And then I was invited to represent District 5 on the Community Action Advisory Board. So I did accept that invitation. We're in the process of that appointment, and the advisory board will recommend that appointment to the county council. And once county council confirms that, then I'll be officially on that board. I've been working with a group of individuals for the last few months organizing a coalition here in Ridgefield geared towards a drug-safe community, primarily focused on youth in the community, building up connections and making sure that we can facilitate things in the community to make sure youth are involved in healthier ways. And I'm really excited about doing that. And I filmed for the State of the City. That was a lot of fun. Saturday, you can find me at Wine Walk. I'll be pouring in the Greeley building, so if you want to come talk while you're getting your wine, that's great. And last but not least, I have 2 things. Megan, welcome. Thank you. Glad you're here. And the very last thing is Mr. Young. My husband is a firefighter, and I have seen some phenomenal mustaches in my life. Yours is fabulous, and it's really I can't stop staring at it. So if I've looked at you a lot during this meeting, it is that your mustache. So anyway, thank you.
All right.
Stop show.
That's great. Okay, Councilor Hamilton.
I second the mustache motion. Just kidding. So I'm on city council. That's been pretty cool. That's a pretty exciting, thrilling thing that happened this week. I'm very excited. I'm very honored. I think all of you, I'm really looking forward to diving right in and taking all of your advice on where you want me to go, do, see, talk to, all the things. So I really thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem Chipman.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, everybody's pretty much covered the things that we've all done. I was in Olympia for 3 days last week with Mayor Cole and Councilor Davis and City Manager Stewart. So next week, Mayor Cole and we will be in Washington DC for 3 days. And also had the ribbon cuttings today, and we're gonna have a ribbon cutting on Saturday, I believe. Is that right? I think we have a ribbon cutting Saturday and filming for the city video. So that was it for me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Just from my end real quick, and I won't go long. First and foremost, Councilor Hamilton, it's a pleasure to have you up here. Yeah, really looking forward to working with you and having a full council again. So that's great. Like other councilors mentioned, we went to Olympia last week and we spent some time, and it was just, you live your life in 15 minutes up there because that's how they schedule it. You go 15 minutes, you talk to everybody, and then their legislative system will open the door and kind of start kicking you out, and then you got on to the next one. But we were up there because we were advocating for some of our state legislative priorities, and we have kind of an important one. Some of you may know that last year we agreed to take control of formerly SR 501, which is Pioneer Road, and it is now just Pioneer Road, and it belongs to the city and no longer to the state, and that's given us some real flexibility and not only just the Pioneer Widening Project, but also doing some additional traffic mitigation for the city. And one of the things we were asking for is slide stabilization funding, because if you lived here any length of time, you know that in the last 20 years, there's been 4 slides on that bottom part of the hill right there. And so we really desperately we were asking for about, between, 1.5 and 4 million, depending on whatever we can get. What you also may have heard is that there is significant budget deficits statewide right now. And so legislators are really scrambling to kind of figure out how to make projects work. And with this one, we do have some support from one member of our delegation, but what we heard a lot is like, hey, that's really expensive to go through. So, but it's a really important project for this community. So if you are so inclined, I would encourage you to write your state legislators and encourage them to approve funding for that through capital budget. That'd be really helpful. Also this weekend is Color Run. It is going to be Youth Arts Month, and so that is the first event of Youth Arts Month, and I will be doing the welcome there to start the race. And so looking forward to seeing Councilor Davis run wherever you're at in the line. I support you, sir. That's great.
I'm trying to get frozen.
Yes. Yeah, and then as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, we do the same thing we did last week in Olympia, and her and I and the city manager will be headed to Washington, D.C. to meet with some of our congressional members and their staffs on some of our federal legislative priorities, and looking forward to reporting back on how that went when we return from that. So, but that is all from me right now, and I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and the community. Just to follow up on the meeting agenda, not only for this evening, but one of the things that we are doing as things have become more and more busy, especially with the comprehensive plan update that we're undergoing this year, is that council has agreed to, instead of just having meetings on every other Thursday and having study sessions ahead of those meetings, which tends to make very long evenings, as we know from this evening and from others that have happened more recently. Instead, we'll be having our regular business meetings on these second and fourth Thursdays, and then on the first and third Thursdays from 4 to 6 p.m. we will have study sessions. So the study session, the first of these study sessions, will be next Thursday, and it will be from 4 to 6, and it is here, and it will be covering the climate chapter of the new comprehensive growth update, comprehensive growth plan. So that will be the first of those study sessions that we'll be doing. We'll be making sure that we get the word out about those. No action will be taken at these study sessions. There'll just be an opportunity to learn more about them so that when actions do come forward in the business meeting, that council has had adequate opportunity to learn, to discuss, to get feedback on that. So that's the first thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Second thing, you'd already talked about the events that are occurring on Saturday, busy day, looking forward to a great day in downtown for that. Thank you very much for all of your assistance on that. And very importantly, welcome, Councilor Hamilton. Thank you very much for your work during this process. We know it's a lot. You've been told by people that they know it's a lot, so do we. As staff, we appreciate you putting yourself out there, and we look forward to working with you. And then final thing I wanted to make sure I mention is State of the City. It was mentioned the filming that is already underway for that March 18th, 5 p.m. tabling at the high school, 6 p.m. The actual event will start. We have finalists that we are moving forward with on the Make a Difference Awards, and the winners of the group and individual categories will be announced at that event on the 18th. So looking forward to celebrating some amazing volunteers in our community. Last thing, that was the last thing. The other last thing, it was asked actually, there were a couple of little updates that people had requested. The short of it, and council knows this because we covered it in the briefings, but just a heads up, the splash pad question was, what was going on out there? What are they doing? Exactly. So we had a leak detection company that was coming out because there are leaks in the vault and within the structure of it that they had issues with when we had tried to turn it on in the past. So we needed to bring in a company that actually could identify where all of those leaks are. They came in, we have a report from them, we have the designers of the splash pad that are now coming back, looking at that report and figuring out what are the solutions that get us to opening this thing up. So significant work still ahead of us, but we're at a point where we want to make sure, number one, that we do it right and that it's safe, and number two, that we're doing everything to get options from professionals that actually do good work on that. Yes, sir.
And just to clarify, that is not coming out of city budget.
No, sir. We have a bond that the contractor that had done the work and that we have significant concerns about the work that they had done, they had actually created a bond for any work that would be necessary to remediate any of the fixes. If we go above that bond amount, then there would be a different conversation that involves people that have law degrees. So that is something that we're certainly hoping that we don't get to that point. But yes, that is covered. We're covering those costs with the bond. The last one was overpass art. What's going on with the overpass art? For those who don't remember that, this is a project that has been going on since about 2017. The concept of it, at least, was that early on, and the idea was to create pedestrian safety screens both on the new overpass that we worked with the port and the state on to over Pioneer, that takes Pioneer over the railroad, that pedestrian safety screen, as well as one on I-5 that mirrors that, that we would integrate artwork onto it. Council has chosen art and the artist. The work is already underway. The idea is to install that those pedestrian safety screens on I-5 and the artwork on the overpass downtown here once the closure of Pioneer is over. Because the idea is it's nighttime work, so in theory you could do it at the same time as we already have the closure going on, but it's just too much. So the work is happening to actually create them. It's a local firm in Battleground that's building the pedestrian safety screens. Then they will be installed after the closure. So we're looking at probably late April or May is when we'd be looking at the installation of those, where the artist would come out, help with the installation, the local firm from Battleground would come in, and there will be nighttime work. They have to be partial closures of I-5, but you do it overnight, and so that you're not impacting traffic. So those are a couple of just updates on projects.
We're closer than we were before.
There you go.
Okay,
Happy
great.
to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for the city manager, council? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Green.
Thank you. I also want to welcome the new counselor to the now full council. It's good to have 7 up there. All I have, since Mr. Stewart just gave all of my updates, is I just want to congratulate Councilor Davis on a tribute to wonkiness with his question about resolution versus ordinance. I do want to note that when I was on the Charter Review Commission, we had 2 vacancies that we needed to fill. And so my question of wonkiness of the candidates was, tell me the difference between a referendum and an initiative. So
you guys are cut from the
there's
same
an
cloth.
exit quiz on this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I know who I'm doing trivia night with. Ms. Lust.
My brain is fried.
From me as well, congratulations and welcome, Councilor Hamilton. And I do not have anything else to add this evening.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we will go to, yes, I know we'll go to City Manager Janine Parker. City Attorney, excuse me. I didn't know. Ms. Parker, hi.
Hello. Hey, I think I see a workshop on one of your new study sessions. I can do a whole 2 hours on ordinances and resolutions and motions and yeah.
We got nothing but time.
But I don't have anything to report. Great meeting tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. Okay, and last, Lieutenant Andrew.
First, I do want to say congratulations, Councilmember Hamilton. It's so wonderful to have you a part of the council, and it's so nice to have a full council at this point. I have nothing for everyone, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Great. Okay, thank you. And with that, this meeting is finally adjourned.
At 10 p.m.